Okay. Call to order this work session, right? Yeah. Yep. Of the Town Council of Santan Valley on February 19th, 2026 at 6 p.m. Well, might be 6:02 p.m. We will have a roll call.
Councilmember Hunt.
Present.
Councilmember Jenkins.
Present.
Councilmember Oaks. Councilmember Tyler.
Present.
Councilmember Wolfert.
Present.
Vice Mayor Hudgens. Mayor Seth.
Present.
There's the quorum.
Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to, on the work session items, we're going to switch up A and B. We're going to hear first from B, interim budget from Bill Copy, finance consultant Pat Walker, consulting, sorry. This will be a presentation discussion regarding the town's interim budget, including its purpose, structure, statutory framework, components, and proposed timeline for adoption.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. I know you're disappointed not to start talking about TPP. And again, I wasn't
Caffeine has a kick in.
I was a little disappointed, very little, that I wasn't at the end, because I figured by then you'd be totally exhausted. Any attention to my presentation
What
anyway.
we'll do is we'll let them wake us up.
All right, well, okay, all right. So,
Oh, no. That was a joke. Come on, we can have some fun here.
all right, so Mayor and Council, so tonight's presentation is regarding an interim budget and discussion. It's for discussion purposes only. There's no action. That'll come a later council meeting. An interim budget discussion is unique in itself, just like probably everything that's going on in Santan Valley right now is kind of unique. Its first year. Interim budgets typically don't occur. It only is happening for Santan Valley because you're newly incorporated. In a few months, when Gabe comes to you for your budget, you'll be starting sometime in May or June. So that's when your normal budget process for next fiscal year will begin. So tonight, I'm just going to kind of hit some of the highlights and some of the reasons why you may want to basically adopt an interim budget. So first of all, I'll just go over what the purpose is. Provide council with an overview. And again, this is a very, very high overview. There's a lot of the information that's being presented. Again, it's for discussion purposes only. It can be changed. You can make, all of this is subject to change. So it's very flexible at this point. And then I left the proposed timeline. There's some discussion that we'll have regarding that one. What's the most appropriate time to have these, if council wants to proceed with going with the interim budget, when would you need to have that?
And Bill, I would just note that we have circulated a copy of your the interim budget that you put together to council so that they have that. And so this would constitute the initial presentation on the interim budget for statutory purposes.
And the other thing I would add is the reason why an interim budget is important in this capacity is if we want to begin spending our own money, we have to have a budget before we can do that. So.
Yeah, and this gives us the flexibility to do that if we need to, as things unfold. So
that was my presentation. So and I'm good. So
You gotta wake us up now for a minute.
it's someone else other than me. So again, the purpose is, as Alan and as Brent has said, is really, we have Santan Valley has approximately $11.5 million sitting in the bank. That's great, but you can't spend any of it until council formally adopts a budget. Again, this is a unique per state statute. You can adopt a budget outside the normal timeline. Like I said, normally you would be adopting a budget sometime in the June, beginning of July time period for the following fiscal year. We're currently in your fiscal year. We go from a July 1 to June 30th. So right now we're in fiscal year 25-26. So you'll be adopting, if you proceed with an interim budget, you'll be actually adopting it sometime in the next month or so. And then you'll have up to, the balance of the fiscal year to spend as much money as you feel possible or need. I do want to point out that one of the differences between an annual budget and what we're doing today, talking about today, is that there's auditor general forms, forms A through G are not required as part of an interim budget process. So you're fortunate there, or Dave is fortunate there for this year. Annual audit is also not required. So next year though, after the following, when you have a full year and you have to go through this process, an audit will be required. So you'll have to have an independent audit firm come in, review your books, make sure that everything is in compliance with their audit guidelines.
Once a budget's approved, how quickly can the funds be accessed?
Once the project, it's really the next day. So, and I can get into, there's going to be, I don't know where that part is of my presentation, but there's one of the issues you're going to run into. So say let's pick April 1st. The budget is adopted, interim budget is adopted by council. Basically the next day, the budget's been approved. However, then we have to go through and work through all of the other changes that need to be made. How do we pay people? We don't have an accounting system. So those things will have to be worked out. Adopting a budget is going to be kind of one of the easiest things, especially this budget.
Yeah.
This is, the back of a napkin is pretty much, one step above that. So this one is pretty easy compared to.
And I'll jump in there and say, Tucson, that we looked at other incorporation efforts and it almost amounted to that. Like Tucson, they had this, just a very simple, almost written out kind of a one pager budget. So yeah, we've done much more than that here.
I know a question is going to be asked, and I came prepared to answer it before it's asked. I have a feeling somebody's going to ask, how much money have we borrowed from Queen Creek and how much interest? Because I heard somebody talking about it last night. We just checked on this. We just got it today. $1.405 million is what we've processed thus far. The interest on that is $1,200.
The quicker we do this, the faster we don't have to borrow money from them.
I do want to point out that is a really good deal.
It doesn't cover their administrative.
I don't think they realized what they were signing or agreeing to until the first invoice came in and they sent it back for a request for reimbursement. But
We
That
certainly
rate-
appreciate it though.
that rate, yeah, greatly appreciated, but that was a great deal. So here is just the budget I put together. Again, you have the detail. There's like 17 pages of a kind of a Excel spreadsheet I put together. I did spend a little bit more time than what Alan indicated on back of a piece of paper or napkin or whatever. So I did spend some time, put some thought into it. Right now, for 25-26, I'm projecting $10 million for the general fund for revenues. And then also basically I'm budgeting the entire amount. And the primary purpose for that is not that I hope you go out and spend it all at one time. And again, if you feel the need, then that's great, but it's not really a challenge to spend it because it will roll over to next year. So you can always use it next year, but it gives you that flexibility to really spend the money how you need. You have up to 10 million. The revenues, I'm estimating at 10 million. You might collect more than 10 million in revenues, and we hope you do, but you can't spend more than 10 million. So even though $11 million might come in, you can only spend 10 million. So that's one thing, you are limited on the expenditure side.
Hey, Bill,
Yes.
something else I would add is we used our best estimates of known expenses, but some things aren't known at this point. And some of the expenditures that we're going to have to make are going to be tremendously expensive. Finance software. Councilmember Jenkins can probably tell you what Maricopa pays for Munis. It's incredibly expensive. Permitting software, HR softwares, those things are very expensive. And until we actually bid that and or find cooperative contracts to make those purchases, we don't know. But one of the reasons why I've been really focused on and trying to get this draft to you guys is Bill did some side work for us at Alan and I's request to project what our expenditures will likely be with the employees, with insurance, with benefits, with some of these purchases and things that we're going to need to do. And what we see is very quickly, it's going to be more than 250,000. And then we've got the next step, which is the 450,000, but Bill has already warned us that 450,000 is not going to cut it when we end up in the May and June timeframe. So we need to get over to spend our own money because pretty soon we're going to outpace our ability to borrow from Queen Creek.
And Bill, that's assuming we max out the budget, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a couple of things to add to that. So one is that we've spent a little over $1 million with Queen Creek. So the balance of the year, 6 months, 250. So you're looking at, in total, I don't know if it includes January or not, but so you're looking at $2.5, $3 million as a limit that you could really have Queen Creek pay for. As you can see in your numbers between HERF revenues, which is just restricted to street maintenance, and general fund, you're almost at $15 million. So as Brent said, as you start bringing on more staff, as you start bringing on expanding as a city, that 250 is going to be used up very, very quickly. So it is, again, if anyone would ask me, would you go forward with this? I would say absolutely, just because then you're not tied to requirement, looking at where every penny is going. You have the flexibility, you have the cash already in place. So it seems to me that it'd be the right approach.
Some of the things that I forgot, Bill, is zoning code, gift study, municipal code, floodplain ordinance,
Election mailouts.
oh God, we just found out about that last night. Probably over $100,000 just for election mailouts, where we have to have them printed and have a company do the election mailers. Over 100,000. That was something we didn't plan for.
Yeah, I did. I'm not sure. I would have to look, but I did include a lot of that information in the interim budget. So I don't know if it was 100,000, but I did include a lot of the items for accounting software, permitting software. All those items are included in this budget. So here's the general fund revenues. I'm not going to really talk a lot about HERF, and because it has a sole purpose for the most part. And right now, let's go back. Let's real quick. The HERF revenue is 4.7 million. A lot of that is just primarily set aside for pavement maintenance. So whenever you enter into an IGA with the county, most likely is what you're going to have to do at the beginning. Then basically you can spend up to $4.7 million in pavement maintenance or whatever kind of falls, street lights, if there's street lights, things like that you wanted. It has to be street related though. It has to be specifically related to streets. But other than that, I wasn't going to discuss HERF revenues at all today. So here are the two right now, and this is as of January 29. So right now you got about 7.6 million. Does not include almost 7.7 million. Does not include HERF. So you're right now, last I checked, I think you're at 11.5, 11.4, something like that, million that you received from state share revenue. The urban revenue sharing, that is basically the income tax component. That one, it doesn't, you can't start collecting that in the middle of a fiscal year. So you'll start receiving that money in July of a new fiscal year. So I put that there just to say, yeah, right now we're not eligible to receive it. Come July 1, you'll receive the full amount for the full year. And I put just interest as another one, is that the money you don't spend, you're gonna want to actively try to invest that money to try to earn some of the money as it sits idle. And right now the interest rates are coming down, obviously, but the rates are still good, so you could still make some pretty good money. And even right now, I would probably start thinking about, having a policy adopted on investment policy or state statutes you can follow, but even start trying to invest that money right now, since you got $12 million sitting in the bank and not earning anything from, other than a bank credit is all you're receiving. So, and that's not worth anything. So I would try to look at investing some of that money as much as possible. And I put it as a line, and again, a lot of this is kind of budget terminology a little bit, but a carry forward. So any money that is not spent, it's not like I don't spend it, I lose it. You don't spend it, it just rolls into next budget year. You just reappropriate it.
And one of the things I'd like to point out is just because we budgeted that we don't have to spend it, but we don't intend to spend it. We're gonna be conservative on our expenditures. But in case we have things that come up that we're not planning for, we want to have capacity for contingency.
Oh, here's again, you got the detail sheet on this. It's this breakdown of general fund. These are the various departments that we've currently set up right now. But right now, you can see $10 million. The big part of this is really a non-departmental. So that's where basically I put, in order to balance the budget, I put almost $6 million, almost $7 million in contingency.
Any reason why Parks is in here twice?
Pardon
Why Parks is in here twice? See Parks and
me?
Rec.
And Rec and then Parks
Yep.
under public.
Yep. Nope. No reason. So I don't know if so is it the same?
Bonus check, yeah.
So that,
You were trying to balance.
that's right. Yeah. It's budgeting. That's all it is. Basic budgeting right there. So I know there was a comment last night about someone finding a misspelling in one of the presentations.
Shoddy.
And was that?
Yeah, it was shoddy.
Nodding.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was the same person that pointed. this out.
Officer involved shotting.
Yeah. So I'll fix that, resend it out.
Oh,
And this is some of the highlights of what's in the budget. The 13 proposed positions, one of them was actually a finance director, so that's already been filled. So legal services, software enhancements, there's a whole bunch in there that we do that I have incorporated into this budget already. If you start needing vehicles, I actually have about 4 or 5 vehicles being purchased as part of this budget. Contingency, a very large contingency budget, and then pavement maintenance. Again, the biggest thing is as you're going forward, without, an accounting system, cooperative agreements, when you go out and buy some of this stuff, you're gonna have to really do some research to find cooperative agreements so you don't violate any state statutes on permits. So this is the one that I think there might be some discussion on. I have the interim budget presentation discussion tonight. So the next meeting, March 5th, if we proceed with the next one, March 5th would be the public hearing. Receive comments. Again, we may change some of this language and some of the actual, how it might be set up might be slightly different. But the idea is that you could go March 5th, or you could go March 19th. There is a window in there that it has to be a minimum of 2 weeks. And a lot of that is based on your local newspaper. So if your newspaper doesn't publish until late in the week, then you may have an issue that you may miss a following council meeting and you may have to wait further. So if you go on March 5th and on your local newspaper, you may miss the March 19th, but you still have April 1st and you could still get it approved and by council, by ordinance, and then the budget would be ready to go April 2nd.
And Bill, to jump in there real quick, I did look at, we're using the Pinal Central post to publish, and they are on a Thursday publication. So I went through and did the calculations, it looks like April 1st would be the target for approval. If this moves forward, we could go a little faster, but that would require soon to do that. And so we're probably gonna, and it would save like 2 weeks. So we're thinking April 1st would probably work, and we can get that done in that timeline. So.
Bill, just going a slide back, because looking at some of the highlights in this budget, and I've just been perusing the little Excel spreadsheet that was provided to us. So you mentioned software enhancements. So it looks like right now, just on the finance side, it looks like we have a considerable line item there for software purchase. Brent had mentioned HR. He'd also mentioned IT. Is that because we're going to be doing that at a later time? Probably not this year, because
No, it's to stand that stuff up this year.
okay.
So actually for each one, there should be one. So like in
Excel spreadsheet.
community development, community services, you should see a software
Finance.
there. So,
Yeah, if you go to finance, there's one on finance.
right, but there's a permitting software
I
line
see
right
right
there.
there. I see, okay.
So there's financial services software, then on the communities services, I have one there.
And we did some research to kind of be in the ballpark of what we think it'll cost us.
Okay.
So it would be in each department. I would have to look to see, I can double check to see if it's in HR.
Permitting.
Because that is something that I thought about that I don't know if we were going to get to it quite this year, since we're looking at hiring maybe a benefits consultant and that. So it doesn't look like I put it there at this point.
And then
Does
the
it allow
clerk-
for the
The clerk will
flexibility?
have a software purchase as well, the meeting software for the clerk.
Yeah, and that's why we have a lot of flexibility in here, to go ahead and really move money around from the contingency into the different, if things progress quicker
Okay.
than what you anticipate, there is plenty of ability, plenty of flexibility to move things around in order to spend and get the software or whatever you need.
Okay.
Are we choosing co-op because of time or?
We don't have purchasing policies too. So that's a challenge because we don't have purchasing policies adopted yet because that's in the town code and we won't be done with it.
And one of the benefits of a co-op is the efficiency of the time, and someone's already done the procurement legwork on that.
I
right?
love
So-
co-ops.
Yeah.
I was just wondering why we, that's just kind of way we're gonna go going forward, but mainly co-op up front.
In the future, we probably won't, in some categories. What I've always typically done before, I was on the state website today, because of what I learned from Garrett yesterday about the printing and mailing stuff. There are 32 different state contracts for printing and mailing. So what we'll then do is we'll start going through those and seeing which ones are better deals. But I will tell you that in the past, I've found for certain types of contracts, you can get a better price if you go out to bid than using the co-op. And that's typically on highly specialized items, including water meters. So we will do more of that analysis. We'll have a procurement person at some point and we'll have a code and we'll be able to see what's out there. And oftentimes it depends if it's an emergency or not too. If you need to turn something around in a month, you're not going to do that through a traditional IFB process. So oftentimes if it's an emergency, you'll use a co-op, but we'll be mindful of that.
And the other thing, co-ops are obviously very, very popular. A lot of times there's ending dates on some of those. You may only have a year or two before it expires. You're better off than going with your own specifications for a 5-year agreement. So there are some pros and cons to cooperatives versus going out and doing your own, RFP, RFQs and stuff like that.
Mr. Mayor, I just thought I would say that I recognize that Renee Guillen, the executive director of the league, just walked in.
Well, hello.
So we've got a dignitary in the audience today.
You guys were talking about fun stuff tonight.
You're gluten for punishment.
With that, Mayor, Council, is there any other questions?
Do you have league membership in there?
I do. I have a whole bunch of memberships in there.
Because Renee called me about it last week and said, are you going to be?
Yes, it's in there.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if it's enough, but I try to look at a few other cities.
Renee already warned me, 100,000 people is going to be expensive.
Yeah, I have that in there. So
Any questions from the council or any comments on the presentation at all? Well, that's where we have to start from.
Sure.
What we have.
Right.
Can't go any further. So we gotta start somewhere, right? So,
And again, you're fortunate enough to start with the population that you have. You're starting with a very, very strong amount, pretty large amount to start with, you know. One of the smaller cities, 5,000 population, getting $10,000 or something like that. It's a good beginning, that's for sure.
I do have a question though, because right now the population has been based on the area of Santan Valley. At what point though, when we do get the census data, is that gonna change our funding that we're gonna have to get back?
Yeah, and I think these are the two best people to answer.
There you are,
Even
okay.
though it's gonna be a little bit off topic, talking about PPT, but those two are that's
I
it.
think it will be, but it's a part of the budget discussion and, yeah, and I've been working with ADOR, Lee's, specialists working with ADOR. And yeah, as far, we're waiting on that certification. We got an update today that their census is hoping that internally they'll have their product done next week, but then they have to run it up the flagpole, get all the approvals, and they're not sure how long that's gonna take. So, but yeah, it should be coming hopefully, end of the month. Maybe that's a little ambitious, early next month. And then we're gonna provide that obviously to the state entities, ADOR. And then they're gonna probably true that up and see how that changes.
Imagine it changed that much.
Actually, I have some good information for you. I came prepared today with all kinds of stuff in case you ask these questions. Tomorrow, we're actually meeting with the Economic Estimates Commission. I'm stumbling over my words again. But we've got that in the meeting at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, and we're gonna learn more. But the 2020 census place number is 90,878. And the date of incorporation projections 104. So I think we're going to be in good shape.
Although the certification is going to be based on the 2020 data. What the census is doing now is 2020. So it could be lower. And then the census has a periodic estimate update process annually. So it might be a little lower at first, but then it's going to jump. It could jump back up when there's the updated estimate. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So.
Come on, 2030. That'll make a difference for us.
Have U-Hauls and see how many U-Hauls are being rented, and they can, kind of get an idea of who's fled.
Just California. If there's no further questions for Bill, thank you. Thank you, Bill. Thanks for your presentation.
No, thank you.
I warmed them up for you.
So as far as next steps, then we'll be coming back
Yeah.
on March 4th with the kind of the tentative interim budget for you guys to review and if it's acceptable to vote on.
Which then, you were saying that would put the public hearing adoption at 1st of April?
Yes, because we would do a 2-week publication. So it'd be published on the 12th, the 19th. So that just means this is the March 18th meeting. So that would push us to the April 1st. Unless we want to do a special meeting, but 2-week difference, we think we can go ahead and just do it on April 1st.
Yeah, better to get that adopted as soon as we can though. But
When's Queen Creek, they approve that increase?
So next council meeting, we will have an item on.
same as ours. Okay, well, appreciate it, Bill. Now we'll move on. We'll go back to item number A. This is Lee. Grateful for you to be here again. It'll be a discussion, presentation regarding the potential adoption of a town transaction privilege tax, or TPT as we know it, for the code, including tax rate consideration, available model city tax code options, and related policy matters. And this is, we may provide direction to the staff for purposes of preparing a draft ordinance and resolution for future consideration, but no formal action to adopt a future will be taken at this meeting. Lee?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Lee Grafstrom, I'm the tax policy analyst with the League of Arizona Cities and Towns, who I understand you're going to become a member of very soon. Thank you so much. Welcome to the news. What we do at the league is we work for all 92 cities and towns.
Thank you for that. Last time it was 91 on your presentation.
It's ingrained now. I'm correcting other people now about 91 versus 92. So we work for all 92 cities and towns. We help them with everything from lobbying is the big thing that's going on right now because legislation, obviously, the legislature's in session. But we also do a lot of things with them for finance, taxes, ordinances, all those things. That's mostly me. And I'm sure there's something that the people who also work there that they do legal stuff. I'm not sure. I work from home, so I know what I do. Everybody else, they just do whatever they do. Since you got a finance director, how are you, Gabe? Good to see you. Surprise, how are you? I've known Gabe for quite some time. You've got a good pick there. Congratulations. So what we're here to do today is we're giving you a presentation about this is what the model code is and what it does and, you know, the 30,000 foot view. I know Bill gave a little presentation about TPT a little later on. Today, what we're going to do is we're doing a working session. Okay. This is not a presentation. This is not, I'm going to sit here and talk and you're all just going to stare at me the whole time. I'm going to ask you questions and you're going to have to give me answers. We're not voting on anything, but the purpose of what we're doing here today is in order for you to adopt a transaction privilege tax code, someone has to write that code. That will be me. In order for me to write that code, I need to know what you want in it. So there's all the standard language. You can't do anything. You can't change any of it. That's the language. It is what it is. What you get to do is you get to insert rates, or in one case, a fee. And the other thing you get to do is you get to choose from the however many options we have left. I think it's like 28, give or take. That are active. At one point we had 55, now we're down to 28. So yes, sir.
Did council all receive a copy of the spreadsheets?
Yeah.
This is probably, in my opinion, Lee, the most useful one, which is the comparators that we chose. And looks like we're going to get that on the screen as well for you guys, because he's going to go through and ask you a bunch of questions and you're probably going to need something to refer to in terms of your opinions.
So when you're setting up, the first question you need to ask yourself is how much are we going to charge? Where are we going to set our rate? Theoretically, you want to set your rate wherever you need it to be in order to collect the amount of money that you need to collect in order to do what you want to do. The reality is every city and town looks at their neighbor and goes, what are they doing? And then says, I'm going to be a little better or a little worse or a little different, or I want to be the same, or I don't want to do this, but I want to know what my neighbors are doing. So I took the 92, I got a list of every rate for every city, for every classification all the way through. And I took the ones that are in your general vicinity and put them on a list for you so that you can see who it is that you're comparing yourselves with. And if we can scroll over to the next sheet over, I want to see where retail is. So if we can just move over to retail. No, not there. All check. That's horrible. Yeah. Scroll. 16. Retail sales right there. AB. Okay, so this is the list of everybody's tax for every classification.
Spreadsheet, you can go to that same classification.
Yeah, go back to the vicinity one and then scroll your way out there.
There you go.
There you go, retail sales. So for retail sales, business code 017. You'll see Apache Junction is on there at 2.4. Hold on. We got old. Oh, look at that. There it is. Sorry. So we've got Apache Junction 2.4%, Florence 2, Gilbert 2, Maricopa 2.5, Mesa 2, Queen Creek 2.25. So based on that,
Coolidge is 3.
The reality of the world, the way people really pick their tax rate, my recommendation to you is you should start with a tax rate of 2%. And we should run 2% across every classification. And then we can adjust it from there later down the line when we decide we want to tax hotels and more, or we want to tax restaurant more, or contracting more, or whatever we want to do. We can do that later, but we need a place to start so that I can start writing this thing. So can I get yes or no? What's the feeling? 2% feel right, wrong, or indifferent, folks?
We're talking about retail sales?
Well, we're talking about retail in general, but I'm thinking we just run it across all the classifications. Yeah, we're running across everything.
Which is interesting because we're looking, we're seeing some of them have them across the board. We weren't if that was the same kind of scenario that they use.
Yeah, generally speaking, most people have one rate for all classifications. At least they start that way. And then things happen. Contractor goes sideways with the council, and so suddenly they raise their contracting tax because they want to bring in more money from contracting because they've had it with these contractors who come in and run away.
One thing to think about when we talk about contracting and construction sales tax is there is a unilateral relationship, symbiotic relationship, maybe is a better way to put it, between what we charge for construction sales tax and what we're able to charge in diff. So if you want to be able to have a diff that's meaningful, you don't want to charge 4 or 5% on construction sales tax because then you can't charge that on the diff side. Just throwing that out there. That's just one example.
Yeah. So with the contracting, what he's talking about, if your contracting rate is more than your regular rate, which is retail. If contracting tax rate is higher than your retail rate, then that difference, whatever that is, if you make it 1% more, then that 1%, 1/3 of everything you get from contracting, you have to dedicate to spend on development and impact fees. It reduces the amount of development impact fees you can collect because you're collecting it from the TPT instead. So we want to avoid that. We're not going to go down that road. My suggestion is go 2% straight across. The only one that I might recommend having a higher rate, I really don't know how many hotels you might have out here. But the one
Zero.
Zero now.
that makes life easy. The one thing that you can do with your TPT is you can offload the expense of running the city and town. You can offload the burden by putting it on visitors who are coming to your hotels. So you'll frequently see, if you look at the hotel classification for the whole list of everybody, you're going to see some really high rates in the hotel and the additional tax upon transient lodging. And what they're doing,
Scottsdale, Paradise
they are
Valley.
shoving money off. Yeah, Tucson just
Like
raised
that.
theirs. Tucson just raised their tax rate. Their rate is 2.6 in general. Their rate on the hotel, just the hotel classification alone, is 9%. And they created a new thing because they're Tucson and they can't, called a non-resident short-term rental, blah, blah, something or other. It's basically a transient tax of 10%. So again, what they're doing is they are taking, it costs so much money to run the city of Tucson. We're going to take this much and we're going to make people who don't live here, don't vote here, make them pay for that.
What's the difference between hotel and transient?
Okay, so the hotel's tax classification, as written, the standard language, taxes any length of stay, okay? Cities are different than the state. At the state level, they only tax transient lodging. That's their classification. That means stays of less than 30 days, 29 days or less booked, that's taxable. Under our tax code, we have hotels classification is any length of stay. There is no limit. That hotel's classification applies to all of them. We also have an additional tax upon transient lodging, a separate classification that only applies to the people who are 29 days or less. So if you're at a hotel and you book 2 weeks at the hotel, you're going to pay hotels for 2 weeks and you're going to pay transient lodging for that 2 weeks. You pay both of those. If you book that hotel for 3 months, if you get an extended stay in here or whatever, you book a room for 3 months, you're only going to pay the hotel tax. You never pay the additional tax on transient lodging at all because you booked your room for more than 29 days.
Do like the VRBOs and those kind of rentals?
So VRBO, Airbnb, all of those folks, those all fall under this hotel's transaction, the hotel's classification and the transient classification for the most part. Right now, we're in spring training. So right now, there are a whole bunch of houses near those ballparks, those 10 parks, that are filled up with somebody who rented that house for 2 months. A lot of baseball players have rented houses, bigger, smaller, depending on their contract, what have you. But they've got long-term stays in a VRBO or Airbnb. And then you got all the people like my friend next week who's coming in from Chicago. He's going to be in for the weekend. He's got a VRBO out by Glendale, even though he was going to see the Cubs. Okay. He's a Cub fan. Anyway, I'm wearing my sock stuff when we go to the games together, but you know, whatever. He rented a house out in Glendale for some reason just for the weekend. So at the house that he's renting, he's going to be paying the hotel's rate plus the additional tax on transient lodging in Glendale. So yes, those are all taxable. So any questions about? Yes.
As far as the 2% rate, why is it that you suggest keeping it 2? I'm just curious.
Sure. I'm suggesting 2, just based on basically what your neighbors are doing, what the rest of the folks on here are doing, because you don't want to say it, but you're in competition with them. You kind of are. I worked for Chandler for a long time. I worked for Chandler with Pat Walker was my boss at Chandler. In fact, I worked there for about 14 years. And in Chandler, the Chandler's tax rate is generally 1.5 across the board. Our next door neighbor, Gilbert, their tax rate was also 1.5 across the board. And we were the 2 lowest forever and ever and ever. But between the 2 of them, we were locked in this death struggle that neither one was going to raise a rate until the other one raised a rate, because damn it, I'm not going to have a higher rate than they have because they're right there, and on and on. It even got so silly that at one point, they lowered their additional tax on transient lodging by 0.1%, so they could be 0.1% lower than Chandler. Because that's going to drive out. Now nobody stays in a hotel in Chandler anymore. Everybody goes to Gilbert. Well, if you're going to save 0.1%, come on, how would you pass that up? At this point, though, Gilbert has now run to the point where they need the money, so they've raised their rate to 2. Chandler's still at 1.5. But Gilbert doesn't have property tax, so that's why.
Yeah, I suppose if somebody's paying attention to the tax rate and they're saying that, whoa, they're charging me more, I'm going to go over there and spend my money for that low rate. Some people are picky that way, I think.
Big ticket item, yeah.
Well, that's what I always do when I buy cars, Mayor, is I research the
Well,
tax
yeah.
rates and I go to the dealership where has the cheapest tax rate.
You're correct. I wish we had a car.
I bought 2 cars in a row in Globe just because they had the lowest rate.
So I could see that could be one contingency there.
That is absolutely a factor when you get up to high ticket items like cars. You said you don't have any car dealers right now? Okay. So when we get into the options, one of the options is a tiered rate. And when we get to that, that's something that will be introduced the minute you get a car dealer. A car dealer's gonna come to you and go, hey, tiered rate, that'd be cool. Have a tiered tax rate.
Notice there isn't a Ford dealer out this way, so.
Yeah.
One listening?
Yeah. So, I wouldn't adopt one until somebody asked you to, though. So there's no value to that.
And so what you're kind of indicating is that 2%, we're not too low, we're not too high, we're kind of in a medium sweet spot.
You're actually below the average rate still. And you're right in line with all of your neighbors, all of everybody in the vicinity. And since we're shooting in the dark, we don't know who your taxpayers are. We don't know what your tax base is. We don't know that you have, you've got thousands and thousands of car washes. So we have to have a car wash option that we're going to take. And that's where all the revenue is going to come from. So we're going to focus on rental tangible property. We don't know where that all lays yet. We don't know how much revenue any of this is going to drive yet. But you got to start someplace is what it comes down to. And it's easier to start pretty much in the same place that everybody else around you is than to start lower and have to go up or higher and then have to come back down.
Is there kind of a number of years that would be something that you would project that we should stay at 2? Now we're at up to 100,000 residents, right? So we're larger than neighboring municipalities from what they started out at.
Right.
We might get to different levels sooner than what they did in their history.
That is absolutely true. And that's something that you're going to find out exactly where you are. You're in a growth process. You're in a starting from zero and building. So right now, even the budget that you have for this interim period and the budget you're going to have for the next fiscal year, those aren't going to look anything at all like the budget 5 years out from now, when you're fully staffed and you've got everything going on your own. That's going to be a completely different animal, and it's going to require a completely different level of funding. What I would recommend is start here, see what comes in, spend what you need to, and hold all of the rest of it in reserve, because you're going to need that eventually, mostly to do capital improvement projects and things like that. And it's much easier to do that with chunk of money in the bank where you can spend it all at one time, as opposed to going out and bonding for it or having to pay over time for those things going forward. But I wouldn't let's say we get into a situation where we set the thing at 2 and you find out that fiscal year 27, from July 1 of 26 through June 30 of 2027, you brought in $50 million and you were thinking you were going to bring in 25. You don't know what to do with this other $25 million. Put it in the bank, wait for it. You've got things that are growing. You've got things that you have to do. You have to ramp up all these things. Make sure you get yourself all the way up to speed before you start looking at, oh, maybe we should cut our tax rate. Because once you cut it, putting it back up again is harder, way, way harder. Anybody can cut a tax rate. That's the easiest 5-0 vote you'll ever going to see in your life. That's a simple one. You're never going to end up getting an initiative saying, do not cut my taxes. That's not going to happen. But raising a tax rate is a different animal. You are going to see people come out and say, I don't want that. So my suggestion really is based on your neighborhood and sort of the average rate that's mostly going now. I would say 2% is a reasonable place to start. And then we figure out where things land years down the road. But I wouldn't really bother looking back at it until you were at least fully staffed in whatever that is in your mind. When you start to take over, when you start taking over things like roads and building permits and all of that sort of thing, as opposed to being on a contract with the county. As you shed those county contracts and start standing up on your own, that's when you should start looking at, okay, we're now fully grown. Now what's our comparison looking like? Yes, sir.
So when I was at Maricopa, and Councilmember Jenkins can correct me if she's learned something over there since I've been gone. It's been quite a while. They went in and said 2.5%.
At the beginning.
At the beginning. And then the other thing that they did, which ended up, and I think you've heard me say this before, they hired a very astute gentleman named Roger Coleman to be their first finance director. And he came out of the grocery world and being an accountant for chains of grocery stores. And when he came in, when we set these TPT rates, you may not know this, Lee, he picked in 2 or 3 categories from the TPT table, one of those being construction sales tax. We set it, and he said, all those money, and council did a financial policy, the money from these 3 categories we're never going to spend. They're one-time revenues, especially on construction. We're going to put all those in the rainy day fund. And that's how Maricopa was able to build the city hall, our first police station and jail. And Copper Sky was actually a bond initiative, but the ability to add the dispatch center that was down there, I know it's not there anymore. We were able to build that in the most opportune time when the economy was the worst and everything was cheap. All the contractors want to work. Those 2 pieces of property, one of them 250 acres, the other one 200 acres. We bought them for a song. We bought them for 10 cents on a dollar because they were developers that went broke and left prior to building their subdivisions. They already had entitlements on it, and they'd made a bunch of money before the market dropped, and they needed a tax break. So they on purpose sold the properties at a loss to deduct, to reduce their taxes. And we were able to buy those 2 properties where Copper Sky and where City Hall is very cheaply. Now they both had floodplain issues that we had to deal with, which is another reason why we got them for 10 cents on the dollar. But we had this big cash reserve, and we were able to build everything probably a quarter of what it would cost in today's dollars, just because the economy was shot. The contractors didn't have any work and people were walking away from their houses. It worked out phenomenally for Maricopa because they set aside those funds and didn't touch them.
So setting it at 2%, I like the idea because we are in competition to some degree, but I don't see anything like industrial or like warehousing type of things that if we wanted to attract like industrial companies to bring more jobs in this area, is there a separate tax rate to that? That would be more attractive to come out here?
What I'd like to do now, this is a good segue, real quick before I segue into this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through what each one of the tax classifications does and where things fall. But before I do that, Brent brings up a very good point. And this should be an ongoing, long-lived along the budget policy, use tax, and construction contracting. All three of the classifications that cover construction contracting, you need to treat those as one-time money all the time. You should never look to those funds for ongoing expenses. They should be one time forever.
And the beautiful thing about Maricopa is they did that as a resolution, as a council policy, so that when future councils got elected, it wasn't pilfered, right? It was intentionally set up for a rainy day fund to build infrastructure, not to be touched until the appropriate time.
So let's walk through what some of the tax classifications actually do. We've got the little chart there and everything. Along the way, we're gonna get to to that first tab, options by city or town. All right, believe it. Oh, no, wait, the next one over from there. One more to the left. Should be, there it is, option summaries. As we're going through the classifications, we're gonna pause here and there to talk about some of the options that are in the code, because we're also gonna make some decisions about which ones of these we're gonna start with. Okay, I'll give you a recommendation of what I think you should do, and then I need you guys to tell me what you want me to do when I put this thing together for you. Okay. So, starting with the classifications, advertising is the first classification. So we go back to, now we go back to third, that one there. Okay. So advertising is referring to local advertising only. Any national advertising campaign, you don't get any money from that. Most of the billboard stuff, you're probably not going to get money from that, but you could, because some of those billboards are going to be local advertising, local businesses, where it only applies to the business that's in town. Okay. Coupons that are just for in town, when that shows up in the paper or wherever, that's local advertising. Okay. Most of the advertising, nobody gets a lot of money from advertising, but it's there. It's one thing we tax that the state does not tax. It's one of the differences between the state and the cities. It's one of the things that I would just put there, and whatever money comes in is whatever money comes in.
About social media and advertising.
Social media, it gets challenging because there's a variety of things. So again, you have to first differentiate between national and local, because the only thing you're looking at is local. So if it's a national campaign that's showing up, that's probably not going to happen. You're probably not going to get anything from it. So the vast majority of the things that show up on your Instagram and your Facebook and wherever else feed, most likely that's not going to be what happens. What you will see some advertising, local advertising from the internet is going to be if somebody puts up their own little sales flyer kind of a thing. Okay, somebody that does, pets. It's small money. It's a small item, generally speaking, but it's one of those ones that it really applies more. It probably really applies more to the city of Phoenix and the city of Tucson, the city of Flagstaff, where they have actual advertising agencies that are living there. Without those, you're probably not going to see a whole lot of money out of it, but just in case, you might as well have the thing. All of these things you should have a rate for in case there is some of that activity going on, because what you want to try to do is you want to try to spread the tax liability amongst as many people as possible. Ideally, you're going to tax everybody a little bit, as opposed to just these people a whole lot. That you want to avoid, okay? Because eventually those people will find a way down to the legislature to get themselves taken out of the list, and now you have nobody getting any money. So yeah, put it out, spread it across everything. There is an option under advertising that basically is don't tax advertising. That's an option that we're going to get rid of, because if you don't want to tax advertising, you can just put a 0 rate in that classification and we're done. But that's advertising in a nutshell. It's not a big category, but it's there. Amusements. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Just a quick question, and I should have asked this earlier when we were talking about setting the baseline. We talk about looking at our neighbors, but really our neighbor is Queen Creek. So is there a reason why we're not just using that as the baseline 2.25?
Up to you guys. I can put whatever number in you want. So,
I mean, that's really kind of what we're looking at. If we're going to be comparing ourselves to approximate city, it's going to be them. Our lines sort of blur. I don't know how
I'm
anyone.
thinking the same thing, kind of like the Gilbert Queen Creek or Gilbert Chandler
dynamic. Yeah, I'm not opposed. I don't know what I don't know, but, I'm not opposed to 2.25.
Anybody else got a vote for a 2.25? Got a hankering?
I
I can pull
I'm
whatever
leaning more
number in you
towards
guys
the
want
two,
to get us started.
just because I'd like to attract more this way, but I'm not opposed to 2.25 though.
What I can do, I can easily set it up for 2.25 to start. And you guys can continue to talk about it amongst yourselves. And if you want, when we get down to the point where we're actually adopting it on the day that it's actually being adopted or the day before, the meeting before it gets adopted, we can talk about, you know what, we've changed our mind. We want 2%, and I will change it all to say 2% all across the board. Or we want to keep 2.25 on all of these, but let's go 2 here, here, and here.
And the reason I see that is because, again, the argument you made about increasing versus cutting,
Right.
like it's a lot easier to go back. I mean, we can go to 2.1, and that we can use that as a maneuver in the future, when we've gotten ourselves settled. And said, hey, well, you know what, we're gonna dial it back 0.15%. Hey, everyone, come and set up shop here.
So one of the things I was gonna point out today is we went through the list and after we talked and you told me how you're gonna do it category by category, that 415, 416 and 417, I would recommend those are higher than 2%. We're a high growth community. The growth is going to come here no matter what. And the fact of the matter is we have a whole lot of houses.
That's nice. I mean, how many things are coming in here?
Yeah.
We got a whole lot of houses.
How does this affect the diff piece of it?
So that is the challenge.
That's the challenge, is the balance.
When you put the rate higher than
Like-
retail, then you're going to have to account for the fact that even as you're doing your first study, you have to show, you have to anticipate, this is the revenue that we get under contracting, from contracting. And if it were at 2.25, it would be this much. And if it's at 4, it'll be that much. And that difference gets subtracted from the amount that you can charge as part of your development fee.
So here would be my
Reduce
argument.
your development fee need by that amount of money.
Here would be my argument. Number one, and Lee doesn't know this, so he's at his disadvantage. We're actually doing our diff study right now. We've hired Tischler Bice. So now is the right time to have that conversation. I don't remember which one of the council members, it might have been Councilmember Tyler that asked this before about how do you go about financially from a benefit burden perspective, make yourself or have a competitive advantage. I think the Chandler idea is crazy, but one way to do that is to have lower development impact fees on commercial and industrial development.
Yeah.
And they focus a lot more on that than they are going to be these tax rates,
Absolutely.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you could say, we've got half of the commercial and industrial diff charges of Queen Creek, that's gonna mean something to somebody. You know what I mean? As a developer.
Developers are gonna come out here, that's gonna attract jobs out in this area.
That's right.
That's why.
So you take and you have high diff in theory on residential development and you, by making that up through the residential diff, then that allows you to discount the commercial and industrial diff. And trust me, I've been doing this for a long time. When they go in to pull that permit to build that commercial or industrial development, it's really hard for them to come in and write several $1 million check to get their permit, right? Does that make sense? You want to be competitive. You have a lower commercial and industrial diff fee.
And while we're in this window, let's talk real quick about what those 3 construction contracting classifications are. Okay, because setting a rate for those, one of those is going to be way bigger for you than any other, and that's going to be the speculative builder. Okay, construction contracting in and of itself is just anything that alters real property at all. Speculative builder is a terrible name.
Changing it.
No, we're not. We can't. We'll never change it. I would love to change it, but we're not going to change it. It was actually the stupid contracting industry people who gave it to us, so we're kind of stuck with it since 1987. Speculative builder, what it really ought to be called is new construction. So, because what we tax under speculative builder is the first sale of a new residential property, a new home at any time, no length, or the first sale of any commercial property if the sale happens within 24 months of final C of O. completion. So the city does not collect tax on the construction costs. The contractor who's building that, the construction companies that are building that are taking draws every month. And at the end of X months, the house is done and then the house gets sold. Okay. Prime contracting is the contracting that's happening here. These are the draws. That's what the state taxes. State and county tax, every time the contractor draws, they get paid on the construction cost. And what we do, we don't get paid anything on any of that. They don't pay any tax to us at all at that point in time. We get paid our percentage on the selling price the day the house sells. That's when we get paid. And we get paid based on a bigger basis than the state does because construction cost is not the same as selling price. We're taxing selling price. With commercial properties, industrial properties, manufacturing properties, what have you. Typically, what you are going to see is they will not be subjected to the spec builder tax. They're not going to be taxed when they sell because they're going to hold on to them for 25 months, let's say, just to throw a number out there. Because that's more than 2 years, and more than 2 years, they're no longer subject to tax on speculative builders. So for construction of industrial projects or large like strip malls and things like that, typically you are going to get prime contracting from those folks. You are going to get them paid on the draws as it's building because they know that it's cheaper to do that than it is to turn around and sell this thing the minute it's done. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't, but if they're planning it properly, they're going to hold on to it for 25 months and then sell the thing. Same thing with apartment complexes. Apartment complexes are notorious for not being sold until the 25th month, and miraculously they all sell in the 25th month. There's a couple of reasons for that. They will say it's because we had to get, we had to have so much occupancy first before we had a valid product that we could actually sell. An empty apartment complex is worth nothing. An apartment complex with 90% occupancy, that's something you can actually sell because it's got an ongoing revenue stream sitting there with it. So what it really comes down to is it's miraculous how often it's month 25 that they suddenly had enough people.
And I don't want you to think that if we charge 4%
Yeah.
for construction sales tax that you can't do a diff. Maricopa charges 4%.
Yeah, you absolutely can.
Diff fees are some of the highest in the whole county.
You absolutely can.
They're some of the highest in the whole county. I think there's only one city that has higher diff fees than Maricopa.
It's certainly doable. It does create a complication when you're doing your impact fee studies. But it's not the end of the world. And you're right. If you can have a lower impact fee, that's far more attractive than a tax rate. The tax rate, they complain about the tax rate because it's visible. Everybody can see what the tax rate is. Development fees, it's hard to find. You got to dig around and look for what the development fees are. And then, okay, which kind of project am I building for which kind of fee am I paying, et cetera, et cetera. So
And they had the luxury, I guess, of having a presentation last night to just talk about the number of entitlements and the thousands of homes that have been platted. They're not going to walk away from those projects because you charge a 4% tax. They're still going. They're still going to sell. They're still going to build.
So as long as we're here, do we want to do a 4% rate to start the drafting of this, or where do we want to go? What's the feeling of the council?
I think it should be at least 4.
I was gonna mirror Queen Creek on the 4.25. We're not really in competition for housing to Queen Creek.
No.
I mean, we're two different markets when it comes to housing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and right now, you have, the other thing you have to keep in mind is right now, the vast majority of your construction that's going on out here is houses. By far. But that's not going to stay that way. There is going to be commercial development. Retail chases rooftops. So as soon as you got enough houses, you're going to start getting more and more retail. That's when you're going to draw that's when you'll draw your car dealer. That's when you'll get your, I was going to say mall, but I'm old. That's when you're going to start seeing your commercial corners and things like that.
Tearing those down.
Yeah. So, those need to go. So
So these are one-time expenditures.
Yeah, well, this is gonna be one-time revenue, so whatever you get from this, you're gonna.
We can spend that money
You
however.
can spend it on anything you want as long as it's a one-time.
I guess want to make sure that we weren't tied to a certain.
Yeah, no, there's nothing, the only thing that gets tied into your development fees is that differential. That differential gets tied in, and what that says is to develop your fee, if your fee was going to be $100, but you're going to get $20 because of the difference here, then now your fee can only be 80. It doesn't mean that you have to spend $20 on that you have to set $20 aside for that. It says that you're going to have to pay the difference of whatever reality turns out to be. And you're going to pay that from wherever you pay it from. But that falls into the CIP, that falls into your CIP budget and all those things. That comes from, that is one-time expenditures. You only build one, you only expand the street corner once, you know?
Like Gilbert, they said it's because they're already built out, right? That's why they're so low.
I think when Brent was talking earlier about separating out revenues, these three particular items would be one of the ones that you set aside for capital purchases, especially because they're tied to a reduction in diff. If you do have these and they're higher than your retail rate. So these would be three that you would set aside for capital projects to build, you know, police, fire, municipality, town halls. So those would be three that we set that and they're one time. So when you think about it, once you get it, you don't want to usually tie that to operations because they vary and it goes with the flow of construction. So if there's high construction, that number's higher. You don't want to bank on that because then all of a sudden you're looking at revenue shortfalls when construction slows down. So those would be three categories that ideally you would set aside and label them as sort of a capital improvement plan or capital improvement plans. So
That being said, I agree with Councilmember Tyler. I think 4 points and 5, we're in a very favorable position and we want to have a nice little, cushion to delve into when we start designing those projects. So I say 4.25.
I think we'll need that revenue because we have a lot of building to do.
Absolutely. Even
Yeah, it's-
driving here.
The example that I've been giving people is based on what we've received thus far in terms of state shared revenues, HERF, VLT, TPT statewide, we're projecting at about $50 million next year. That sounds great until you compare that to Queen Creek, which is smaller than us, and they're almost a $500 million.
Yeah.
That's their budget. So we've got to have revenue to provide the things that the citizens want. And this is one of those tools in the toolbox.
Well, absolutely. They're looking at their little rec center. You know, we'll be able to provide that at some point, hopefully.
Parks and different community centers for.
And just to round out the conversation on why you segregate contracting from ongoing expenses, don't use contracting revenue for ongoing expenses, is right now you got building permits all over the place and houses are going up left and right. And that's fabulous. And then who's to say that 2027 is not the same as 2007? And now you've got a bunch of half-built houses and a bunch of lots that aren't getting built and nothing's getting sold and nothing's going anywhere. And your contracting revenue goes from here to nothing. And if you were counting on that for ongoing expenditures, where's that money coming from? I was with Chandler in 07, 08 when that all went to hell. And one of the things that saved us, that was good for us, was we were not relying on the contracting revenue because contracting, the bottom just fell out. It just absolutely fell out. That's the biggest loss of revenue that we had in those 2-3 years, and almost into 2010, it didn't before it started to flatten back up again. And the thing that kept it from being a huge problem for us was we never put it into ongoing expenditures at all. It was never used for that. It was used, whatever amount you got last year, that's how much you can spend this year. Whatever you got last year, spend that this year. Just hold on to it and let life go through.
That's another great comparator with Maricopa. Something else, we talk about diversity of revenue. Keep in mind that our city is likely to never have enterprise funds, which mean businesses inside the city, water service, sewer service, those are enterprise funds. They have an opportunity to make a lot of money for your government entity. We're not likely to have those. So very similar to Maricopa with the global water situation in Maricopa, you got to diversify and take advantage of the revenues that you need to support your populace.
Yeah, I see that would be if ever a long time out in the future.
years.
And a lot of money. for having your own water.
Well, the largest city in Canada owns our utility company here, or one of the two.
Yeah, we
Edmonton
have two
owns.
different water providers here.
When you start getting into water services and wastewater treatment and all those sorts of things, that's when you're gonna wanna start talking to your neighbors and say, hey, what if we put this like right between us and we both pay for that and it'll serve both of us that way? And then you can shed some of that cost and shed some of the responsibility for that. But you're right, that's years and years and years out in the future. Long gone. Not a thing to worry about right now. All right, so what I'm hearing is we're looking at, I'm gonna set up the initial draft at 2.25, with construction contracting, those three classifications at 4.25, and we'll move from there.
So
Does that sound reasonable to everybody?
I don't have any concerns with that.
Okay, I'm seeing some nodding and heading. Okay, that's good. Fair enough. All right. So stepping back into let's talk about classifications. Amusements, that's movie theaters, any ticket to anything you ever go to. It also, there's an option that I'm going to recommend that you choose, and that would tax health-related physical space used for a health-related activity. Is sort of the way that it works. It comes out to health spas, gym memberships, karate instruction, swimming instruction, dance studios, those sorts of things. You're probably going to have more gyms here faster than you're going to have more before you get a mall, obviously. But that's an option that I'm going to recommend that you go ahead and take. But those are all things that are covered under amusements. And again, that option is stuff that the state does not tax that you would be taxing, but most cities actually have that option. So that's the amusements classification. You'll probably get some decent money out of that eventually. There's a couple of other options in there that we'll talk about that we're not really gonna look at too much. Feed at wholesale. Maybe, I don't know. Do you guys have farmers?
Lots of them.
Lots of them.
And hay brokers, there's several hay brokers here in Sinton.
So then it would make sense for you folks to have a tax on feed at wholesale, even though most of the neighbors don't.
Isn't there something in legislation that,
So one of the let's see, when the Wayfair bill went through in 2019, the state model city tax code, we were forced to take all of our retail and match their retail going forward, with a handful of exceptions. We could still tax food for home consumption. We could still tax cars sold to people who are on the lot and drive it away. We could still tax feed at wholesale. We could still tax certain agricultural and domestic animals. These are things that small towns have a lot of reliance on for their revenue. The state does not tax those. We were carved out that we could still continue to tax them. So they show up as options in our code. And feed at wholesale is one of those options. It's an optional classification that we have. I recommend that you do in fact take it. If you've got anybody who sells any of that kind of stuff, it's better to have and get nothing from than not have and wish you did, because that's the only business going on in town. It's one of those situations, especially when you're first starting out, especially for a rural area. I know that it's not rural forever. It's and 100,000 people, it's hard to call rural, but it's a rural area. It's probably one that'd be worthwhile to set up, and whatever happens, happens. So it's one of the things that I will recommend that you do choose as an option. So yeah, I think that's the legislation you were talking about. There's always legislation every
yeah, I
year.
thought I read something in one of those bills.
Yeah, every year.
And now, yeah, they try to
But
make
yeah.
it non-taxable.
yeah, that, and I know the bill you're talking about, that they're talking about a different thing that the state still taxes. We would still be carved out and still be able to do what we're doing. That didn't impact us.
Well, we can't do anything with food still.
We'll get to food in a minute. Food's gonna be an interesting conversation. We can absolutely still tax food. But
We'll get to it.
Sorry, I'm getting
Great question.
mine's fast.
Job printing, this is just the printing services and things like that. There is an option in there that I'm gonna recommend you take. It's job printing for publication and for publishers. If somehow you end up with the printing press that prints what's left of the Republic when they print paper, you're gonna want that because that's the only money you're gonna get. So you're gonna want to have that option. We'll get to that when we get there. Jet fuel. Is there an airport?
No.
You got any plans for an airport?
I don't know where to put it.
On that we know of.
Then we're not doing an airport then. That's easy. That could, jet fuel tax is an option. Just so you know, just a little education on this. There's a difference between jet fuel tax and aviation gas. So all the little small planes in that, they run on AV fuel. It's low lead 100. It's racing fuel, if you want to call it that, depending on your age and what you do for your weekends. That's aviation fuel. That's just gasoline, effectively. Okay, that's taxed under retail because it's not for cars. Car gasoline is not subject to tax. We're preempted on all that. What this tax is jet fuel. Jet fuel for jet engines. You have to have an airport. You have to have an airport with a big enough runway, and you have to have people who fly their little private jets in and out of those things, back and forth. And if you got that, then yeah, you're going to want a rate for that. That's why Mesa is the only one on this list that has it. Chandler has it, Scottsdale, Phoenix, obviously. Any place, Prescott, anybody who has a runway that jets come in and out of, they're gonna have an FBO, they're gonna have a fuel broker online that's going to be selling AV gas and jet fuel. In that case, you're gonna want to tax jet fuel. So something to put in the back of your head. Anybody ever comes over and says, hey, this would be a great place for an airport, and I'm gonna make the runway this long. And if you're gonna make it this long, then I can land little private jets on it. We'll have a good time.
We're in the flight path for Mesa Gateway, so I just don't think it's possible.
Oh, don't be surprised. You'd be amazed what these airplane people can do when they put their mind to it. Every year we got 2 bills about airplanes for no damn reason. So they're relentless.
I got a question for Brent at Florence, because they don't have a feed at wholesale. Was that the same when you were there?
No,
Because it seems like to me there would be in Florence.
there wasn't a feed store, and I don't think there's any hay brokers in Florence. There is in Coolidge, but I don't think there is in Florence.
But you didn't have a charge at Coolidge, or you did?
Yeah, if you switch over to that if you switch to the next one to the right, you can go to that classification and see everybody who's on the,
Not many.
you gotta go to the left to get to wholesale.
It wasn't many. We went away from.
There's not a bunch, but the ones that have it are
Critical.
it's important to them.
Oh, 3.
Well, nearby is AJ.
Yeah.
2.4.
Flagstaff has it, and yeah, there's
The Gila Band?
quite a few of them in there.
Oh, yeah.
At the various rates. But as you can see, it's mostly the smaller towns.
We had it at 3%, but we had some wholesalers there.
There's your line right there, the 0 on it right now.
There's your line.
The TBD region code and. Okay. We had it. Yes. If over the weekend, when you're sitting around and you're going through this spreadsheet just for giggles and fun, just so you know, every time you see the sort of that red, orange, whatever it is, that means that's the highest rate in that classification. Okay, so you can figure out who's got the highest rate on.
Tucson.
You should probably explain South Tucson.
South Tucson, what happens is you start to go broke and all of a sudden your tax rate goes way up, so.
But they're also a quarter mile, their entire city.
Exactly, it's not like it's a big town.
A quarter square mile.
The other thing that you'll see on there, it says changes highlighted, so this tab actually comes off of a much larger spreadsheet I have that I run every month. It's got everybody's tax rate in every classification, and anybody whose rate changes in a given month, I highlight the name of the town and then I highlight the thing that changed. Here, Tucson, like I said, just went from 4% on hotels to 9%. They got rid of their per bed stay of $4 per bed per night. That went down to 0. And then a little further off to the right, you're going to see that the new thing, the transient non-hotel short-term rental of 10%. So hotel pays 9, Airbnb, VRBO, everybody else in Tucson pays 10. And they got rid of their $4 per bed per night tax in the process. So that's highlight. That's why that's highlighted on there. They show up in orange because those are the highest rates in those classifications. Tucson was the only one that had that first per bed tax thing. That was, and their hotel stuff is outside of the model city tax code. So you don't have an option of choosing that. You can't put that on That's a thing their voters did a long time ago. And it's one of the things we can't fix for Tucson.
A quick question.
Sure.
As we're deciding these rates, say if we decided to do a TPT plus a franchise, would you recommend staying lower on the TPT and higher franchise, or low franchise, higher TPT?
So when we get down to telecommunications and the utilities, there are actually options that deal with franchise fees and right-of-way fees, all the row fees and all those sorts of things. That say either you're going to give them credit for taxes paid, or you're going to give against their franchise fee, or you'll give credit for TPT against the franchise fee paid, or you'll not tax the franchise fee itself. We'll get to those options. My recommendation is that you do not cut any of those. You do not give them a break on franchise fee. You do not tax the franchise fee, because they're going to be here anyway.
And I was thinking,
They're
since
gonna do
we
it
don't have
no matter what.
franchise, we should really look into franchise.
They're going to do it no matter what. You're absolutely going to want to have franchise licenses with everybody who gets in your right of way. Everybody in your right of way. The only one you can't is the telephone company. They were here before God, so they don't.
When we approve the TPTs, can we also do franchise, or franchise, does that have to go to the vote?
That's a completely separate thing, and those always have to go to the vote. Yeah, you'll negotiate those with the various providers who are in the row, and then once you've got a deal on that goes to the electric. All right, so jet fuel, good, fun times. The next one on the list, manufactured buildings. This is if you have a manufactured building seller. The state treats it as part of contracting. We used to have it as part of contracting. And then I want to say 1988, 90, somewhere in that window, the manufactured home builders came in and said, we really don't want to be under construction contracting. Why don't you treat us more like retail? We would rather be retail. So in other words, we'd rather be taxed when we sell the trailer out of this property that's here in town, as opposed to having to pay contracting tax, which means it's wherever we install the thing. The state taxes them when they install. We tax them where they sell them. So, all right, fine. If that's what you want to do, we'll create a manufactured buildings classification for you, and we'll carve you out of this, and we'll put you over here, and we'll treat you like retail. And then they all moved out of town, like right out of town, just a foot out of town. Little sneaks. But they're taxable under retail, not under where they put the trailer. So we pick them up under use tax instead now. Let's see, next up, timbering and other extraction. So this is for all of your forests, your lumber grade forests that you have around here, and the granite quarries and those sorts of things. Probably not going to get a lot of money out of that, but
We do have.
whatever he has, what they have.
Gravel pits.
Yeah. Well, gravel is retail, so we'll get to that though. But yeah, that's largely for lumber. The next one, severance metalliferous mining. So we have a mining classification that deals with precious metal. The state has a different version, sort of different. It's not that different. But then there's a state preemption that says for this classification, the maximum tax rate you're allowed to have is 0.1, a tenth of 1%. So that's why you see everybody on there has 0.10%, or they've got nothing in a couple of cases. So we're going to put you down for 0.10 and call it a day. And that way, if anybody ever finds copper or whatever, or silver and starts digging it out,
Well, there is copper.
percent. So
I think we've run out of space to mine. There is copper.
depending on the price, they'll find a way. Don't worry about a thing. If it's worth it, they'll get it out. Publishing a couple publications, that's obviously, it is what it is. It's printing newspapers and magazines and those sorts of things. It's also newsletters and a variety of other items if they're sold. You have to pay a subscription price to that. We see some of this that falls in under online stuff, but actually most of the money from publishing now comes from people who are online as opposed to actually printing a thing and sending it somewhere. So, and then we hit hotels and transient lodging. So we've talked about the hotels classification is any length of any stay. at a hotel, which includes Airbnb and VRBO and all those fine folks, along with the normal hotels you would think of. And then the additional tax upon transient lodging on that very same stay at either one of those locations, a regular hotel or an Airbnb. If you booked the stay for less than 30 days, it's subject to the additional tax upon transient lodging.
Should we match Queen Creek on this one since we're looking at matching Queen Creek in the other categories?
Now, there is one other aspect to the hotels and additional tax on transient lodging. It also applies to restaurant and bars, but that's not usually where we see an issue with it. There is a statute in Title IX that says that's non-discrimination against the hospitality industry. Okay, you cannot discriminate against the hospitality industry. And if you do, then you have to spend any of that money that's discriminatory on tourism spending as defined in the statute. And the first one, I can't remember exactly how it goes. There's like a list of 4 or 5 things. And the first one is attractions or something like that. And then the second one, not the first one, clever. The second one is Chambers of Commerce and Tourism Authorities. I can't imagine who wrote this statute, but they didn't put themselves first, at least. That's something anyways, but yeah, that's who they wrote it for. So what will happen is, what does discriminatory mean? Discriminatory means the tax rate is more than 2% over your regular tax rate. So if it's more than 2% over, the part that's more than 2 over, that's the discriminatory part. So if you start with a 2 1/4 retail rate, you can go up to 4 1/4 on hotel and 4 1/4 on the additional tax on transient lodging and not have to spend any money as discriminatory under 9/500.06. Okay, you don't have to worry about that. If you went higher than 2% over retail, the difference above that, all of that must be spent on one of these 4 or 5 categories that they have defined in statute. They're very vague. People do weird things and say that they fall under this one or that one. If you're worried about who's going to come after you, that's when the Chamber of Commerce and the tourism people come after you, is if you start doing that. And
So here's what we
that's
really know with respect to this particular item. Whatever money we collected, and it wasn't a ton, over the 2%, we split it evenly amongst the Chamber of Commerce, the Gila County Historical Museum, and the Arts Center in downtown Globe, which is where the Rose Mofford Museum's at. So we just took those excess revenues, we tracked them, and we split it 3 ways, and then they had to give us financial reports on an annual basis on how they spent the money that we provided. But it was a way to help fund, their events and what have you.
You use it for in-house, events.
It was before my time. That's just what they did in Globe.
So as long as the thing that you're spending it on is for the promotion of tourism. So there are ways that you can spend this money on internal things that you're doing that meet those definitions. For example, you could, I know of a place that has used this money to promote tourism by building walking paths around one of the nature areas that they have. Because building those walking paths makes it more attractive for people to come and stay at the hotel and do touristy things walking around that. So there are definitions in there. You have to stay in the window, but they're very vague. They're very, very vague.
Councilmember Jenkins, do you know how Maricopa spends the excess? Because you guys are 4.5% or 5.5%. Do you know how you spend it?
For, I believe it's for the Wild West. Festival.
Yeah, that makes sense. So,
Which used to be the Salsa Festival. Is that what it is
They
called
still
now?
have that too.
Oh, they do? Okay.
one of the interesting things, Chandler never had this issue when I was working for Chandler, but Chandler still gave money to the chamber and to the tourism committee or whatever it was over there, and spent it on the Ostrich Festival. Just because you don't qualify necessarily for this is discriminatory, you can always do what Scottsdale does. Scottsdale takes everything that comes from the additional tax on transient lodging, every penny of it, and spends it on tourism, because that's what that council wants to spend that money on. You don't have to. You can spend whatever money you want, however you want. But if you get into that range where you're that much over, then you are required to try to follow along.
So you don't have to do the full thing, but you can take the full amount.
Sure. Yeah, you can choose to dedicate whatever portion of whatever funds from whatever category you want to do. The challenge is you don't want to do too much of that because you tie your hands. And what if that's not the most important thing this year? What if there was a bad fire? What if there was a flood? What if you got some traumatic other thing happen that you really want to spend money on, but you've decided you're going to dedicate all of these revenues for this thing that's not really important?
The cool thing from where I sit is we've got two different groups that I'm aware of that are talking about starting a chamber. And I know that's just ours, right? As a matter of fact, I got an email from one of the council members today about that. Was that you, Mayor?
I don't know if I forwarded it, but Brian McCoy did.
Yeah. We must.
He said he's applied now to
He's applied.
to establish, he had it and it went dormant. They let it go. And then now he's putting it back into place.
That would give us an opportunity to generate revenue so that we could sponsor the chamber, for example. It's not going to generate a lot of money, but and keep in mind, we don't have any hotels now, so it'd be someday.
It would just be the
When we
Airbnb.
get our arena and our ball field for that professional team, yeah.
I do wonder how many VRBOs we have out here with the seasonal visitors. I mean, it has to be a pretty decent amount.
They're more than likely there are.
We do have rental homes in our.
In theory, they're all licensed with the state and paying state TVC, in theory.
Yeah.
Of course they are.
Absolutely. Everybody's honest. Everybody wants to do their part. Everybody's a good tax-paying citizen. The reality of the matter is, there are a variety of companies out there, that provide a service where they just crawl across the web and they identify rental properties, short-term rentals from all of the various, platforms that make them available, and they will provide you with that list. And, you're more than welcome next year or whenever, to go ahead and contract up with one of those folks. The only thing you cannot do is you cannot pay them a contingency fee. They have to charge you a flat fee, period. You cannot pay them a contingency fee because technically what they're doing is they're doing a tax audit. And you cannot have a tax audit on a contingency fee basis. So you just have to pay them a flat fee, and they will give you a whole long list of, here's every Airbnb, VRBO, every single property by the address. And then you take that address list and you send it to your fine friends at the Department of Revenue, and they go, we don't do that. And say, no, show me why these people are not on my list of licensed taxpayers for hotel and transient lodging. And that's where you mix the two of those, pieces of information.
So where do you think we want to be? Twin Creek's at 3, Florence is at 2, Maricopa's at 5.5.
It's not gonna generate a whole lot.
Right, yeah, it won't generate a lot of money until you get hotels, real hotels, but it will generate money from your Airbnb people and your VRBO people. And have you had have those neighbors showed up yet? Oh, don't worry, they're coming. The people who have an Airbnb next door to them, they're coming.
But
Don't
even
worry
then-
about a thing.
Even then, it wouldn't be politically difficult to raise the rates on that, it seems.
No, everybody hates those people.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They're gonna come here and tell you, why did you let that be there? Get that out of here.
So yeah, no, there's
So
no,
they show up, we raise it.
Fall into this.
No.
Whole nother
no,
can of worms.
that's a whole other complaint that comes to the council. But they're not taxed under this.
I honestly like going higher around 5% for this, but I don't know where everyone else is falling on that.
Well, my advice to you would be to start out, with just the 2% over. And or 2% over so if you're on 2.25, then make it 4.25.
Do 4.25.
On both and call it the day there.
Yeah.
One of the other things that,
Just for the business code 144, right?
yeah, exactly. For both of them, right? 044 and 144.
It seems like Queen Creek's pretty low then.
They have that hotel downtown now.
Yeah, they have to.
At 3. instead of the 4.25. If they didn't go, at 2% above.
Yeah.
Kept it at 3, so maybe they wanted.
So I deal with all of the, I deal with all the ordinances for rate increases for everybody, with the exception of like Phoenix and Tucson and those folks. But for everybody else, we pretty much do the ordinance drafting and the resolutions and all the calculations and everything else. And what you'll find is that some of the bond sellers who come in and, say you've got a project, you want to try to finance it, you're going to run a bond, and they will point to this pair of classifications right here and go, well, have you tapped this? Have you maxed this out? Because if you max this out, that can help pay for the bond that you're about to try to run. And if you can do that, that makes that bond that much less expensive if you can dedicate a piece of this revenue to it. Or if you can just, even if you just have it there, it gives you greater flexibility and greater ability to pay for your bond. So I've been doing a lot of rate increases for a lot of smaller towns that are suddenly now, the hotels class and the additional tax on transient lodging class are both exactly 2% more than their retail rate. Whatever they were before, now they're all 2% more, because that money, that 2%, that's general fund. You can do whatever you want with that money.
So are you
It's the
suggesting,
above two that's a problem.
are you suggesting 4.25 for both of those categories, 144 and 213?
Sure, I certainly would, because again,
Okay. 144 and 144.
044 and 144. So section 444 and 447 at the top of the list there. Because again, these are not residents. These are not voters. These are not, this tax does not impact the people who live here. It impacts the people who come here and stay for the weekend and then take off. That's who pays it. Now, and if you want to look at it, okay, but we want to attract those people. Well, let's just say you do want to attract those people. Have you ever been to Vegas or Hawaii? You have any idea how much you paid on tax for the hotel that you stayed at? Did you care that you were paying that tax? No. Why? Because you're in a hotel, you're on vacation. What you want to do is you want to go to a place for whatever reason. Same thing with this. Nobody is going to be looking at your tax rate is this and Queen Creek is that. So I'm going to stay in Queen Creek instead and do the thing I want to do in Santander. It's just, it's a non-factor. Far and away. Makes sense. All right, so 4.25 for hotels and additional tax on transient lodging. Fair enough. Next up, we're going to talk about rental of real property. Rental leasing licensing for use of real property. This is where residential rental used to be. All gone. We haven't changed the tax code for it yet. We're going to do that at the next Municipal Tax Code Commission meeting. But we are preempted by the state. As of 1/1/25, you cannot tax residential rents. So what's left is just commercial, non-residential rental. And there's a couple options in there that we're going to deal with when we get to the option list, that we'll tell you what to do with them. But that's all this is. This is renting real property. So this is going to be renting, a building to put your office, an office to put your business in. If you've got that situation, when you pay your landlord will pay tax on that amount that he gets from you. It also affects storage facilities. So a storage unit.
We got lots of those.
Storage unit is real property. Rental of real property is taxable. That's non-residential. You can't live in those things. So those will be subject to this tax. It also touches things. I'm going to tell a story about when I was a kid in Chicago and the mob. So in Chicago, in the bars, there's pool tables in all the bars, and there's pinball machines or, video games or whatever. And those are generally owned by some friends. So they're not owned by the bar. They're rented to the bar. Well, the same situation happens here. A lot of the bars and restaurants, if they've got those sorts of things, those amusement games and those kinds of things, they don't typically own those things. They're typically renting them from an amusement company that puts them in and puts them wherever. So what that amusement company is doing is they are renting you a pool table, which feels like it's tangible property, except that it's going to take up a footprint of this building. So since it takes up a footprint of the building, it's now a real property rental, and it's actually licensing for use because they don't get to tell you where to put the pool table. The bar owner still gets to decide where he's going to put the pool table. The other example of licensing for use, that probably deals more with your storage folks, there's two versions of storage. Okay, there's three really. There's the storage where this is my unit and I open the door and I put my stuff in it and I close the door and I lock it. That's mine. I have total control of that. I'm just renting a box that has a door on it. Then there's the warehousing situation. And in the warehousing situation, I can either have the kind of warehouse situation where I rent so many square feet in such a place, in a certain spot, with a little cage around it, and I can open and unlock that, and that's mine. I can come and go as I please. And then there's the more common warehousing situation where I'm going to rent, I need 20,000 square feet, and you're going to pick what 20,000 square feet of all of this building that's going to be, and you're going to put your stuff, my stuff, wherever you want to put it. I'm going to pay you just to keep it. And when I want it, when I want to come and get it, I have to ask you to get it out for me and bring it to me. I don't get to go in and get it myself. I have no control over where it's going to be in the building, and I cannot get to it myself. I have to go through you. That's licensing for use. I am licensing so much space. I don't know how much, but so much, that's mine. So that's what, and licensing for use is a thing we do that the state does not do. So another difference between us and the state. This one I would recommend you stay at the 2.25, same as everybody else.
What
because
about-
you're in rentals?
We have a bunch of like RV storage.
I was just gonna
Where you
say.
don't lock up, but they're just parking spaces typically that are, how do they work?
RV storage is licensing for use of real property.
Licensing for use.
Yeah. That is rental
We
of
got a
real
lot of those.
property.
You got those.
Because you are parking it somewhere and you're taking up so much space. So that's, you're paying for space to put your things, rental of real property. License for use, depends on the situation, how they handle it. But yeah, that's going to be taxable. And again, I would recommend that you just keep this. Anytime you're looking at anything for rent that you can also buy at retail, you want those to be the same. And this is more important on the next one, but it applies to real property as well. You want your rental to stay in line with your retail as best you can. So I would recommend the 2.25 on this one as well. Okay. And then the same thing with rental of tangible personal property. Now this one's even a closer tie. If you're going to tax it if it was sold, then you should tax it if it's being rented, and the tax should be the same either way. The fact that it was rented instead of sold shouldn't make a difference. By the same token, if it's exempt when you rent it, it should be exempt, or if it's exempt when you buy it at retail, then it should be exempt when you rent it. That's one of the changes that we just did for college textbooks, or not for college textbooks, for software for schools. We have an exemption that says we don't tax software for schools under retail, but we didn't have anything under rental. And so we just added a thing under rental to say, yeah, we match that. We can mirror those two. But rental TPP is obvious. The tax on rental for TPP goes to wherever the lessor is located. Okay. So if the lessor is here, it doesn't matter where they rent the thing and take it to, the tax stays here. Restaurant and bars, obviously. This is another one that frequently has a higher rate, or you'll often see people put a higher rate. Restaurant and bar is another one that's under the 500.06 hospitality category. So again, here, if you go more than 2% over, you're going to run into must spend on tourism situations. You don't see that very often, but it is something that some of the cities do. They tax restaurants and bars higher. Here I'm thinking of Flag and Prescott, Whiskey Row, and I know Tempe played with it for a while because they have, for some reason, they got a lot of bars like right around the middle of town for some reason. Yeah, so I would recommend that you just stay at the regular rate. There's, I don't see any point in trying to gouge this category or make your living off of this category. If what you had here was a really vibrant downtown district where everybody stayed in this 1 mile walking up and down the strip every night, and you got police going back and forth, then you want to charge those people more. Now you've got a thing that's there. But if you don't have that situation, which I don't think you do, then there's no point in going with a higher rate on this one. Yeah, so 2.25, match it up with retail, and stay in that lane. Okay, so next up, okay, so that one that's 460 retail sales portion of a single item. Apache Junction has what's known as option V. It's a tiered tax rate. So in Apache Junction, if you buy something that costs more than $2,000, for the first 2,000, you're going to pay tax at 2.4%. And for the amount that goes over 2,000, you only pay 1.4%.
We had the same thing in Globe.
Typically, this is brought on by your car dealers.
Car dealers,
Car dealer
lobby.
are the ones who will bring this to you. Wait for the car dealer to bring it to you. When you start thinking about, oh, somebody wants us to do an option B, a tiered tax rate. Okay, couple of things. Please pick an option that somebody's already used, an amount someone's already using. 5,000 and 10,000 are the two most popular. And only do the portion of the item over that amount. There's two ways of doing it. You can set it up where if I sell something, I've got a $2,000 single item over $2,000. This is all on a single item. If I'm selling something for $5,000, you can either set it up where, because I have a tiered rate and you've exceeded the $2,000 line, the whole thing is only taxed at 1.4%. Or the first 2,000 is taxed at 2.4 and the next 3,000 is taxed at 1.4. That one's the one that's fair to everybody, because everybody who sells things for $1,980 is going to be paying 2.4. Why should the guy who's selling the thing for $3,050 pay less on that first chunk of money? So you want to go with a portion over, not the full giveaway. And probably 5,000 or 10,000 are the best ones to use for that. That usually hits your target audience without putting too much of a crimp. What I would not recommend you do is what Phoenix did, which is set a threshold and then peg it to the CPI every 2 years and have to increase it every 2 years. And so I think it's at 14. Wow. It started at 10. Last year, it just changed. It changes every 2 years. Last year it was 13,886. This year it's 14,530 something. You can find it. You'll see it on the next slide over. It's a pain. No, the one all the way at the end. There you go. Just keep scrolling to the right and get to right. You'll see a whole slew of them in a row after you get past retail. So there's one version, another,
All the numbers keep them.
another, and then when you get to the end, last year it was 13,886, and now it's 14,338 is the limit, and it'll be that limit for 2 more years, and then it'll go up again by whatever the increase in CPI was, and it just keeps trucking along.
Hence your line item here.
Yeah, and just keeps one after the other after the other. It's like, please stop. But anyway, God forbid you get to the point where you're looking at a tiered tax rate. If you are, let me know, and we'll work with it then. How about that?
The Ford dealership shows up.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right,
They're coming.
all right.
Schneff Ford.
Hey. Can I borrow some money?
What do you know? Hold on. All right.
You're the ribbon company, sir.
I'm gonna skip over the next one and go to 415.1 MRRA amounts. This is a part of contracting. Under regular contracting, you've got a house, you want your roof put on or replaced or what have you. MRRA means modification, repair, maintenance, repair, replacement, alteration. Maintenance, repair, replacement, alteration. If you replace your roof, you don't pay contracting tax, you pay MRRA. You pay MRRA, which is the tax on the value of the material sold to you. That's the easiest way of doing it. This is always set at the same rate as your retail rate. So it will always be exactly the same as retail, no matter what. But that's what it's for. And what happens with MRRA, MRRA is an attempt how do I even? Okay, this whole thing is traumatic for me because it's been years and years and years I've been dealing with this and it never seems to stop. When they went to simplification and the cities all had to be collected by the state, part of what they tried to do was get rid of the contracting classification for the state and for the cities. They wanted to go to tax on materials only, which, okay. Again, where are all the lumber grade forests in Arizona? Oh, that's right, Oregon and Canada. Where are all of the granite and concrete coming from? Oh, right, not in Arizona. Where's steel coming from? There's a steel plant in downtown Chandler or in downtown Phoenix. Okay, that's not where the steel I-beams came from that built the high rises around here, but there's a steel plant, that's true. Where do you think bricks come from? Because it's not here. Where do you think stucco comes from originally? And also not here. So if you're only going to tax materials instead of the actual building of the thing, we're going to lose a ton of money. Round and round and round and round and round and round. What we wound up with was, well, if it's for maintenance, repair, or replacement, then we'll only tax the materials on just those. And really what they were trying to do, the poster child for that was a plumbing lady who showed up at every meeting. I run a plumbing company and we just do plumbing on houses and just small this and small that. And I pay, the argument being contracting is subject to tax on the total amount you pay and you get 35% off for labor, standard deduction for labor. And her argument is when I go into a house and I fix their plumbing, I might put in $12 in parts and $400 in labor, but I only get 35% off of that $412 bill. And that ain't fair. And she's right. That's not fair. Contracting was written for home builders. Go figure. So, and 35% is generous for home builders. I've never seen it more than 27 ever. As part of all of that, we wound up with MRR, maintenance, repair, and replacement. And then the Department of Revenue got a hold of it and changed the definition of contracting and changed the definition of everything and separated regular contracting into something that they call modification and not regular contracting into the thing they called alteration, altering an existing property as opposed to modifying a property that didn't exist somehow. How do you modify a thing that doesn't exist? Don't try to logic out the part of it. So then we had MRRA. And the end all be all of this whole thing is if somebody comes to your town and does a MRRA job, they probably bought the materials somewhere else. They keep trying to go, oh, Home Depot, Home Depot, Home Depot. I'm like, oh, first of all, Home Depot is not everywhere. And second of all, most real contractors don't go to Home Depot. That's not what they do. They're not getting your roofing tiles from Home Depot. You might go get 4 of them because you need them and that's sort of a match, but they're not getting an entire roof of roofing tiles from Home Depot. It just doesn't happen that way. So stop telling me about Home Depot. We need a way to keep this money in the town where this job is happening. MRRA. MRRA says you're not paying tax on contracting. We're going to pay the MRRA amount equivalent to retail at the place where the job takes place. So I know that was way too long, but it's been way worse for me. So there's that. I mean, and it still doesn't end. So you could have been me. You could have made a horrible decision 35 years ago, and this is your job now. So,
Can I just say we're getting to 8 o'clock. Does anyone need a break? Like 5-minute break?
Oh, 5-minute break would be awesome.
Let's do a 5-minute break.
Fantastic.
Can we do that?
Yeah. Yes. When we come back, we'll wrap this up and then we'll go over the options real quick. It shouldn't take us much longer. Okay. Can I get a smoke? Can I get
Recess for 5 minutes?
That would be.
Hey, we're gonna reconvene back into our work session from our recess. Put us to sleep.
Bet, man. I'm here for it.
No, this has been very informative, by the way.
Welcome to the wonderful excitement of my life, TP3. So exciting. As you can
And I
tell
thought
by
I
the-
knew everything. and I
by the
didn't.
standing room only crowd, you can tell how exciting this kind of thing is. So, but
We appreciate it.
no problem. All right, let's move on to the last handful of categories we've got here, and then we'll get into.
Give me one.
We'll get into the options. Here, you can bring it back up again. There we go. All right, I believe we are at communications 470. Okay, so communications, this is telecom. This is all your cell phone providers are in here. Question you get all the time is cable TV. No, we don't tax cable TV. Cable TV is an interstate telecommunication because ESPN's in Bristol, Connecticut, so that's interstate and we don't tax it. But wait, isn't interstate exemptions usually for it starts here and it ends up out of state? Yes, that's true. But that's not, there's no definition like that anywhere in statute. And the court in People's Choice versus City of Tucson decided that interstate means either direction. So we do not tax cable TV, direct TV, dish. We also don't tax over the top services. So Sling and all the things that come in over the internet, none of that is taxable. What is taxable by those folks is when you rent a movie from them. Well, that's going to be under rental of TPP. Or if you buy the fight, that's going to be under amusements because you're buying essentially a ticket to a show. So that's going to be under the amusements category. But the rest of the things that you get from them, they don't pay anything to you, but they will pay right away fees for the ones that are in your row. The communications is everybody else. Again, I would recommend sticking with 2 1/4 here. Just leave it the same as everybody else. You're going to make money from most of these folks on those franchise fees, those franchise licenses.
So is that cell phone towers, like installing and putting them in, or is that more just the services provided by the cell phone?
Right. So the towers themselves are construction contracting when they go in. Then once the tower is up, then they rent space on that tower to other people. And if they're renting it to somebody who's also in the telecommunications business, then that's not taxable. If it's somebody who's not, if somebody who's doing their own private network of some sort, which you probably don't have here right now, but we do in Chandler for around Intel, they've got their own internal thing that they do. That part would be taxable as rental of TPP because you're renting space on their tower. But by and large, what you're looking at under this classification is cell phone bills. Cell phone bills is the big ticket under here. Okay. Transporting for hire. Transporting for hire means hiring a railroad or an airplane to move stuff. It also covers used to cabs and towing and limo services. Cabs and limo services and Uber and Lyft and all of those people became exempt. Well, first Uber and Lyft became exempt because we have to support the new whatever industry. And then the next year, the cab companies came back and said, what about me? I do the same thing. Why am I taxable? And then cab companies became exempt across the board for everybody. And now there's an option available still, I think, on towing under this classification. That's kind of the only motor vehicle thing really that's left. Most of the motor vehicle stuff is exempted because they pay VLT and trucks pay their own separate fees under Title 28. But mostly what this comes down to is it's a small category for pretty much everybody unless you get a railroad hub in town or nearby and have that sort of thing going on. But again, just leave that at 2 1/4, and if it happens, it happens, and call it a day.
So that transporting for hire, that can be any individual who has a trailer that somebody hires to haul whatever.
Yeah, theoretically, yes, exactly. Yeah. It's usually not individuals. It's not gonna be trucks necessarily. It's not semis, because those are the ones covered by the Title 28 pieces. But usually it's going to be, because even the rental of the trailer or the pickup truck at Home Depot is gonna be under rental TPP, not under this. Transporting for hire means somebody else is driving, is what it comes down to. So somebody else is driving the train, somebody else is driving the plane, somebody else is driving the tow truck. You're not, or somebody else is driving the limo, before they carve all that stuff up. So, it used to be a more impactful category, especially for cabs. Cab companies used to be a big ticket item under this. But now they're all exempted. So we got exempted by the state on that.
Cart bus or other public transportation, things like that.
Well, it all depends on who's running the bus. If it's a bus run by a government entity of any kind, then it's not going to be subject to the tax. Okay. And we'll get into there is an exemption that we're going to talk about beds in the state and all that. And when they could be taxable, sales to them could be taxable. We'll get to it when we get to it. But yeah, typically not buses. No. Public transportation is exempted. Under the utilities class, we've got water, electric, natural gas. Those are probably the three big ones. There are some exemptions under there. There is an option that I'm going to tell you not to take. But if the people show up that want it, then that's when you're going to take it. This is just utilities. It's your tax on water bills. Okay. There's an option. You don't do your own water and sell your own water yet. But when you do, sometime in the future, when you do start, there's an option available to charge the tax to people who you are selling water to, servicing, that are outside of town, provided there's no tax where they are. So in other words, you can't cross town boundary into the next town over just because you serve them. If that town charges the tax, they still get that tax on that resident. But for people who live in the county outside of your boundary that are hooked up to your water system, there's a way to tax those folks as well, to treat them the same as every other ratepayer. In the city.
Fall under that because they bought two water companies that lie outside of their county, Maricopa, and their town boundary.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a whole separate thing. That's a whole much bigger, more different topic. But in that situation, that tax I think does apply for them because they own it, because they run the utility themselves.
In Globe, we served people outside of our city limits with our water company and they paid a tax if they didn't live in town.
Mm-hmm.
And in Florence, we had fill spouts that for people to haul water to their houses, they paid a tax where the customers in town didn't.
Right.
Because it was being transported out of town.
And then another aspect of the whole water thing, I know it doesn't matter right now, but just something to keep in mind in the future. If you are in a situation where you are providing the service to somebody who's outside of your boundary, you can in fact charge them a higher rate for the water, in addition to the fact that you're charging them for the tax. The logic there being people who are in town are paying property tax, are paying for the bonds to build the water plant, whatever. People outside are not subjected to those taxes, those property taxes. So they're not contributing on that side. So they end up contributing with a higher fee, a higher rate for water itself. But that's a future discussion.
If we tax, say, water here,
Mhm.
and we collect from EPCOR, we also have Queen Creek water in our boundaries.
Yep.
Would Queen Creek be taxing them and us?
So when you start,
Taxes
okay,
on
so
it.
this is a perfect example of what I was just talking about, that option that's coming up. Okay, so right now, Queen Creek is servicing some of your residents with their water. So they're charging them their fees and they are charging them Queen Creek tax as well, because they have that option to tax the people who are outside their boundary. Once you stand up a utilities tax, you will start collecting that tax. So Queen Creek will start charging them Santan Valley tax, and they'll have to pay you.
I get what he's asking though. It almost sounds like it could.
But you're not gonna pay both. You're not gonna pay both.
You don't have to pay
They
double.
don't, they will no longer pay Queen Creek's tax. They will pay your tax instead.
They're, Queen Creek's gonna gather our taxes instead
They're
of.
gonna collect the money.
Because of the provision, we don't have an existing tax.
If you don't have one
We have
right
the
now,
tax.
once you got one,
They won't.
That's a great
then they'll
question.
need to be.
That's
then
awesome.
they'll start collecting.
Do you have Queen Creek water?
So we did pay for the pool.
There you go. See? Congratulations.
Move the water from our area to there
Yeah.
to fill up. the-
So what about gas? Like, cause I know I pay City of Mesa for gas.
Yeah.
Really?
I do.
So does Neil Carter.
Really?
That came up on.
So what-
Oh,
This
that's
this whole
awesome.
part
Sorry,
of
what was that?
Santan Valley is all on Mesa
That
Gas.
is
City of
awesome.
Mesa for
That's awesome.
gas.
Because they're out here repairing the gas line all the time.
Okay.
I don't understand
So
how.
so when that happens,
Far. Why
when you guys adopt your own tax, you'll start paying Santan Valley tax. No longer pay Mesa tax.
Okay.
That's awesome.
would be?
That's a great question.
Money stays
I
here.
didn't know that.
And wait till the fine folks in Mesa find out.
We're doing a quarter again.
Right, yeah.
Trying to push this along. We at 2 1/4.
Yeah, we got a lot of.
The,
calls.
yeah, the tax stays where you are. They can only charge their tax if there's no equivalent excise tax charge. You go back to so utilities set to 2 1/4. Wastewater removal services, this is not something that's gonna matter to you because you don't have a wastewater treatment plant. So you're not charging anybody for sewer. So we're just gonna leave that one as a 0 for right now. Jet fuel use, no, you don't have a jet, so that's still gonna be 0. Use tax. I highly recommend that you have a use tax. There's no reason not to. You'll see that if you look at the long list, there's a lot of people that don't have a use tax, for whatever reason. But all that use tax does, everybody in your town who sells anything at retail is required to pay your town tax. They must, no matter what. Everybody who's not in this town, who sells in this town, doesn't pay your tax. If you don't have a use tax means somebody who buys something from outside the town does have to pay your tax, pays your use tax to balance that retail. So they don't have the advantage of going out of town. There's nothing wrong with going and buying your truck in Globe, paying tax to Globe because that's where you bought it. Happy day. But don't go to Texas and buy your truck, which is what a lot of people do. Don't go to New Mexico. Used to be a good place to buy them, but mostly it's Texas right now. They go to Texas, they buy a truck and they drive it back. And if your town doesn't have a use tax, then when they register at the MVD, you don't get any money. If you do have a use tax, MVD collects the use tax for you on the purchase price of that truck, as if that truck had been bought in your town. Okay. The whole point of use tax is to protect your local retailers from unfair competition from people who are outside and are not subject to your retail tax. So you absolutely should have a use tax. Use tax must match your retail rate. Whatever your retail is, if you decide to go with an option on your retail, then there has to be an option for use tax as well for purchase prices. We'll get there when we get there. For now, 2 1/4 and call it a day. We're not going to do the portion thing right now. Okay. So those are the classifications that we have. And we've worked out what the tax rates are going to be, at least in my initial draft of this whole thing. Now let's go through the options. There's only 28 of them. It'll be quicker. We've already talked about a handful of them, so this will be fairly fast. If you want to go to the first page. Okay, so that's the chart of everybody's chosen option of the 28 on the list. And you can see, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see that some are a lot more popular than others. You see the total number of them when we get to the bottom. Okay, so that's who has that option. So option number 3, 65 cities and towns have it. But then when you get out to like D and K and KK and QQ, there's only one city that has that option. And when we get to that option, you'll find out probably why. But as we go through them, I'm going to explain to you what they do. And then I'm going to give you a recommendation on whether or not I think you should adopt this option as part of your code to get started. Okay. Any of these options are available to you at any time. Just because we put it in now or don't put it in now doesn't mean it has to stay that way. You can take them out, you can put them in. There's a process. There's always a process for everything, but we'll get to it. All right. I kind of put them in order of sections in the model code, so we can kind of talk to them in order. And we're going to start by talking about some things that are in gross income. Okay. So the first one on this list is KK. It's in section 270. This says that certain charitable organizations are deemed to be in business if they host a fundraising event with attendance greater than 10,000 people. So has anybody ever gone to Pat's Run? Congratulations. You did not get taxed for that because you got taxed, or Tempe, I should say, got taxed for that because that's who this is. That's what this is all about. That's why they're the only ones who have option KK. My recommendation is no, don't bother. Because you don't have Pat's Run or similar. Rock and Roll Marathon is another one that comes through there as well. There's no point in having that one. Okay. Next one, C, is in section 285. This is a weird one. This creates a moratorium on certain classifications for X number of years. The classifications are contracting, telecommunications, utilities, retail, restaurant, and use tax. I'm sorry. It depends on what you do. It's mostly contracting and commercial lease. That's the law. Contracting and commercial lease. And this is for property that you've just annexed that has something on it already or is being built on it. Or if you annex a piece of property that had water rights that have to stay with whoever it was you annexed it from, and you have to deal with all of that. This is not common. If you do this, all you're doing is you're setting a moratorium on this specific piece of property that's new and identified only on those two classifications, and it has to be for a certain number of years. And the certain number of years is sort of tied to paying back the whoever it is that's being impacted when you annex that or when you purchase that property with water rights, irrigation rights that were tied to somebody else. This is not a thing that you're going to have. I can't remember the last time somebody adopted this to start with. There's only a handful that have it anyway. This is not a thing you're going to need to worry about. This was something that happened a long ago. If you get to the point where you're going to annex a piece of property or you're going to purchase a piece of property that has irrigation rights, farming rights to it that you have to somehow protect, the person you're getting it from will bring this up to you and then we'll deal with that. Okay.
So your recommendation is no.
For now, no and no. Yeah, we're no and no on both of these. Yeah, there we go. Okay, the next one is the one I was talking about, contracting, telecom, utilities, retail, use tax, restaurant. This is exclude the specified activities, so those classifications, when they occur on a military base that's in town. You guys got a military base? No.
We have a military property, the Rittenhouse Air Base is here.
Okay. So conceivably, but probably not, because the only place that this applies to is Davis-Monthan. Two-sided. Even Luke is not entirely covered by this, so Glendale doesn't have it. The only place that has this is Tucson, and it only covers Davis-Monthan. Actually, it's an interesting, weird little thing. When we did the Wayfair thing, and we had to do all of our retail the same way the state does retail, and except for these certain carve-outs, we forgot to carve out Davis-Monthan for the city of Tucson for retail. So technically, they should start paying retail tax because the state doesn't have this exemption. Only Tucson has this exemption, and we're not allowed to have our own exemptions anymore. But that's a Tucson problem, not my problem. So, let them work on it. I don't want anybody going into 426017 and changing any of those toggles or anything just so we can fix this. So that's again a no. Next one, G, in section 405. This one says do not tax local advertising. This is a no. I'm going to get rid of this for everybody and their brother. Anybody who's got it, we're going to change that. We're going to remove this piece from the advertising section. And if you don't want to tax local advertising, you just adopt a zero tax rate for that classification and call it a day. So that's a no. Next up, H, under amusements. Here's our first yes. Impose tax on charges to use space for health-related activities. This is health spas, gym memberships, karate studios, swim schools, dance studios, all of those fine folks. I recommend that, yes, you do have that, right from the start. So, next one, J, do not tax golf greens fees. I recommend no. Why, what makes golfers so special? I used to be a golfer. It's a terrible game. You should have to pay tax if you're gonna be dumb enough to try and play. All right, next up, another one, very popular, option K, do not tax contracting at Fort Huachuca. I don't know why this is an option. It shouldn't be an option, but it's an option. Is Fort Huachuca here in Santan Valley? No. Well, then we don't need that option, do we? No. All right, next one, contracting, this is, option N. This falls under, contracting for speculative builder. This one says that, again, spec builder is tax based on the selling price of the property. They're gonna buy a whole bunch of acres, they're gonna parcel it up, they're gonna put in some roads and stuff, they're gonna build a bunch of houses, and as they sell each one of those houses, you're going to pay tax based on that selling price. This option would provide them the option of deducting the fair market value of the real property of the land underneath that house from the selling price before they pay the tax. There are several cities that have this. Nobody that adopted it anytime lately. Mostly you see people taking it away. We used to have another one that was for the cost of the land. So you had two options. You could go cost of land or fair market value or no deduction for land at all. Most people were none at all. A lot of them were on cost. And when we got rid of cost, we said you can switch to fair market, and none of them did. All the people who were cost went to no deduction for land. My recommendation is do not deduct land. That would be a no. Heated wholesale, this again, there's an option that you have to choose in order to put this in your tax code. My recommendation is yes. And we'll go from there. Then jet fuel is next. That's going to be a no, because we don't have a jet fuel. We don't have a jet. Okay. Job printing, impose tax on job printing sold to publishers. So again, this is the option that says, if you end up with the printing plant that prints the Republic or whatever, here in town, and they sell their printed product to the Republic, then you would get to pay, they'd have to pay tax on that. My recommendation is we do want to impose tax on job printing sold to publishers. So that would be a yes on that one. Now we're down to 6, which is the additional tax on transient lodging. The way that this is written right now, this moment, you have to adopt 6 in order to get section 447. However, this is the most screwed up option of all the options in the code because nobody is doing it right. The reason that you're supposed to have 6 in the hotel section, it says we impose the tax on every, and then it goes down to a little spot number A, and it says person. And by saying we impose this tax on every person, that means we impose it on your stay at this hotel, no matter how long it is, every person. The option 6 inserts in place of person the word transient. We impose this tax on every transient. And what this was supposed to do, if you'll recall, the state only taxes transient lodging. They only tax people who stay for less than 30 days. By putting that word transient in there, we've defined transient as someone who stays for less than 30 days. So if you pick this option, you are basically saying my hotel's classification will do the same thing exactly and tax the exact same people that the state transient lodging does. I'm only going to tax transients. If you have a stay longer, you're not subject to my hotel's tax, just like you're not subject to the state tax. Unfortunately, the other piece that's in this option right now is, and now you get 447. And 447 says an additional tax upon transient lodging. So those two things, which are opposite of each other, are in the same option right now. At the next Municipal Tax Code Commission, we are finally going to fix this. We're finally going to reduce this to what it's really supposed to be, which is if you have option 6, that means you only tax transients. 447 will be part of the standard language. We're going to treat it like it's part of the standard language for you. My answer on this one right now is we're gonna say no. Unless the Department of Revenue says we have to say yes in order to put 447 in. We'll figure that out when we get there. I'll have that wonderful argument with Audrey and Lisa and the fine folks over there about how I don't know how the tax code works. So we're gonna call it no. All right? Because you do not want to tax transients. You want, under hotels, you want to tax persons. You are gonna have section 447. No problem. All right, where are we up to now? Next up is 4, rental of real property. This one says impose a tax on real property rental to a nonprofit primary healthcare facility. So people see nonprofit healthcare facility, oh gosh, we don't want to tax them. What? Oh, that's not who you're taxing. You're taxing the people who own the land and the building, not the people operating the facility in there. When you get to the point where you have these kinds of facilities, you're going to have a significant amount of money changing hands every month, and adding your little bit of tax to it isn't going to make a difference at all to the person who's running the healthcare facility. So the answer on this one is yes, we do want to impose that. Next up, do not tax the rental of a single commercial property, assuming that by determining that if it's just a single, you only have one rental property, you're not in business. You just have a casual activity going on. I've never seen anybody whose commercial property rental was actually casual. You could probably argue that, yeah, I wound up with an extra house because my aunt died and I don't know what the hell to do with it, so I'm renting it out, but I'm not in business. But you don't go and buy, a 7-Eleven and lease it off to somebody and go, I'm not in business. The hell you're not. The IRS thinks you are. So I'm going to say the hard no on the R. We're not going to put that in our code. Going down to the next page now for me. Next one is option 7 in section 450 for tangible personal property. This is going to be a yes. What this option does is this says you can collect tax on the gross income from coin operated washing and dryer machines, car washes. I've never seen a coin operated dry cleaning machine, but in theory, there must have been one back in the 80s because it's in the code, and they wouldn't have put something in there that didn't exist, of course. But this is your laundromats and car washes. Just to talk about this for just a minute. When you drop your laundry off at the dry cleaner, even if it's just to be washed, that's not taxable. When you go to the laundromat and you put the quarters in and all that, that's what's taxable. You're renting that machine. When you go and drop it off and somebody else washes your clothes for you and gives them back folded and hung up and all that stuff, they're the ones doing the washing. You're not renting anything. You're just getting a service from them. When you get the machine, you're renting a machine. Same thing with car washes. If you go to a car wash and you put an amount of money and you sit in your car and it drags you into the thing, or you drive into the thing and it drags you out and then you drive away, you just rented the machinery that washed your car. That's what you did.
We got lots of those.
Okay.
A lot of rentals going on
Now, if you've got a car wash where you pull up to the car wash and you get out and the guy says, which one do you want? And then new car smell. And then the window shield guy comes over and, hey, I can fix that crack for you. And then they take your car and then it goes through and it comes out and guys dry it off and then they give it back to you and you got to tip them. That's not what's taxed here because they're providing a service to you. You are not doing that. If you sit in the car and ride through it, absolutely taxable. You have rented the machine. If they take the car away from you, not. Okay. So we're going to say yes on that. We want that one. Next up, number 9, impose tax on the sale or purchase of livestock, feed, and agricultural chemicals. So this is one of the carve outs.
What about V?
Did I miss V? Yeah, on purpose.
Okay. You're testing us.
Fine, whatever. Fine. Okay, V, this is the tier tax rate. We've talked a lot about the tier tax rate. Like I said, it applies the tax rate up to whatever threshold you pick, and you can literally pick any one, but I'm going to tell you, if you ask me to help you with this, you're either going to get $5,000 or $10,000, and it's not going to go up every 2 years with CPI. And it's only going to be applied to the portion above that number, not below. because I'm gonna write your ordinance and that's what it's gonna say. No. The option B, like I said, wait for this to come to you. We are not gonna take option B. That's a no. We're not gonna start ourselves out handicapped with a tiered tax rate and hope that that attracts a car dealer. Trust me, when a car dealer wants to come, they'll talk to you, and then we can adopt it then. All right, fine. So 9. Happy. Impose tax on the sale purchase of livestock feed and agricultural chemicals. Again, this is one of the items that's in 426017, one of the carve-outs we got from retail. It's extremely important to some of the more rural communities. I don't know if it's going to be extremely important here or not. My recommendation is yes, you might as well put it on there. Why would you give it away when you don't, when nobody's saying, get rid of that for me? So I'm going to say yes. All right. Next one. Do not tax the sale of college textbooks. We're going to add to this one and make it also the rental of college textbooks. Well, assuming that there's a bill in the legislature right now that says don't tax the rental of college textbooks. The state does not tax the sale, but they do tax the rental. And for whatever reason, U of A wants them to stop doing that. So there's a bill. If the bill goes through, we will absolutely change this option to say don't tax the retail sale and also don't tax the rental of college textbooks. We might end up doing it anyway, just because we're better than the legislature that things like that. My recommendation is do not take this one. There's only 6 cities that have it, and none of them are Tempe, Tucson, or Flagstaff. None of them are one. I don't even think any of the ones that have it have college in them. So I'm not sure what.
College next door.
Arizona. I know, I saw it as I'm driving in. I'm like, oh, look at that. That's gonna be good for my textbook thing. Yeah, you're gonna want the tax from that. So we are not going to go with Z. Moving on, what do we got next? Delicious QQ. Most recent option that we've created. Do not tax the sale of fine art sold at an art auction in this state to a non-resident if the art is shipped out of state for use outside the state. Clear as day. And as it turns out, oddly enough, only Scottsdale. Only Scottsdale. This was a bill in the legislature a couple years back. The art gallery people from Scottsdale got all set and went down to the legislature. And well, first they got all upset at Scottsdale, and then they found out that they were also taxable under the state. So they went and ran a bill that said you can't do that at the state level, and you can't do that at the local level either. And we managed to get that part taken out. Got the city part taken out. This is a common way that we deal with weird exemptions that they create. If you want to create an exemption at the state level, have at it. But you know, things that don't matter statewide can mean a lot locally. And maybe this means a lot to somebody. So we'll make an option, and anybody who wants to adopt it can go and adopt it. And if there's an art gallery in Sedona that really has they want this exemption, they can go to the council in Sedona and get Sedona to adopt QQ. As you can see, Scottsdale only. Been there for 4, 5, 6 years now, a while. It's been there a while, and it's only Scottsdale. So again, I'm gonna go with no. I don't know if you got a big art gallery auction thing going on here.
Not yet.
But hey, any day now, when they come, you can tell them there's the potential for this. All right, now we're into the use tax section. The first one on here is 15, which says don't have a use tax. I'm going to say that's a hard no. You do want, right now, use tax is an option. We're going to change use tax to be just part of the code. And if you don't want to have a use tax, put a 0 tax rate on it and call it a day. But for right now, it's an option. We are not going to adopt that one. HH, do not tax certain charitable donations. And when I say that, I'm going to say no. We're not going to include this because all it does is it creates an exemption for a very weird, little, highly stipulated, highly hard to control set of donations of property by you to a charitable organization. And it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. It's a weird little carve out. There's no reason for it to be in there. I would recommend no. So if we want to look into it more closely, I can give you the whole language of it and you can see if it means something to you. I can't imagine that it will. It does for a couple of cities. It doesn't for many. JJ. JJ is an option right now, but when use tax becomes part of the regular code, JJ will be part of the regular code. It will not be an option. What JJ does is it exempts the city, or the town, I should say, from its own use tax. So you would still pay, if the town purchased a thing from outside the state, fire truck, from Wisconsin, you're going to pay state and county or state use tax on that. If you don't have this exemption, you will also pay the town's use tax on that. So when you pay the town's use tax, what that means is at the end of the month, Gabe is going to send a check for the town's use tax to the Department of Revenue. And in a couple of weeks, when the Department of Revenue processes your tax return, the Department of Revenue is going to send that money back to you because that's your use tax to you. So why? Why are we handing them money for a couple, 3 weeks to potentially screw it up and then send it back to us whenever? So we will absolutely be using JJ. That's a yes. There's no reason to have this circular nonsense going on with the Department of Revenue. What we really need is we need an option that says that the city's use of its own utility, if it's the utility provider, should also be exempt, because that's a whole nother thing that people that have water, gas, and electric do. But we'll at least solve the problems under use tax. All right, telecommunications. Do not allow tax credit for franchise and license fees paid to the municipality. That's got to be a yes. Do not allow the credit. Why would I give them? Why would I reduce the amount of TPT they owe me because they're paying me a franchise fee when I can get them to pay me TPT and a franchise fee on both? Why bother? Same thing now. Next up, we're on 11. So that was a yes. We're on 11, transportation. Do not tax transportation for hire by our motor vehicle. I'm going to say no for right now, but frankly, they're almost all exempt already anyway. So we're probably going to have to make a change to the transporting for hire section. Right now, we're already preempted. It's already in statute that we can't tax this anyhow. But their language is different than this language that's in this option. So I don't want to put this option language in here that kind of does the same thing, but doesn't really match. I'd rather just be reliant on the fact that statute preempts us. We can't tax it. I don't have to worry about what are the differences between the two. So we're going to go with no on transporting for hire, number 11.
What about if the vehicle doesn't have a driver?
Okay, simmer down now. That's a rental of TPP. If you rent a car, you've rented a car. TPP rental, not transporting for hire. All right, number 12. We're getting near the end. We're almost done. This is utilities. Again, it's the same thing that we had under community telecom. Do not allow credit. We're going to say yes. We are not going to allow credit for franchise fees against their TPT. And number 13, impose tax on the franchise fee. So these feel like they're the same thing. They're not, actually. Again, we're going to say yes on this one as well. We will impose tax on franchise fees. There's no reason to exempt that portion. What that portion is, okay, so franchise fees paid to the municipality, that's how much they paid you to be in the right of way. Okay. That's what they're going to get a credit for, is the amount that they paid you against however much TPT they collected from all of their subscribers, all their customers. The next one down, impose tax on franchise fees. Okay. So we're imposing tax on when they charge you, here's your water bill and here's your franchise fee. Here's your $1.80 that you paid on the franchise fee. We're going to tax that $1.80 of franchise fee. They're pawning off your right of way fee out to their customers. we're not going to give them an exemption for the fact that they're pulling this off and passing it through, instead of just paying it the way that they should be out of their profit. So, so my recommendation on 13 is a yes. And then GG, this is where you can impose the tax on people who are outside of your town. We're going to say yes. I know you don't have a utility that you're imposing or that you're doing, but maybe one day you are going to, and when you do, you want this already in place so that you don't have to worry about it. Okay. And then the last one, do not tax sales of gas or electricity to manufacturing or smelting operations. This is a specific exemption. Again, this was a bill that they ran through. It also includes now international something centers. It's not data centers, international companies. I don't know. I can't remember what the exact explanation was, but that's also on there. Some weird thing that managed to weasel their way into an exemption from the state. What this does is it says that if you've got a manufacturing or a smelting facility in your town, this would say you don't tax the gas, electric, water that gets sold to them. They get an exemption. So they get to tell the provider, the water company, electric company, whoever it is, I've got this exemption because I am this thing. I qualify for this thing. The Commerce Authority says I qualify. So if I qualify and I'm in a town that has this exemption, don't charge me city tax and don't charge me state tax. As you can see,
Sahuarita has a smelter.
it's Buckeye and Sahuarita. Sahuarita's got a smelter and Buckeye's got a manufacturing. So yeah, it's in right there. And it's because they have those that's the only reason that they've got that exemption. Everybody else, there's no point in cluttering up your code with stuff you don't need. And that's the end of that. All right. Does everybody understand what we're doing here and where we're at roughly? So I'm going to take the set of decisions that we've made, the discussion that we've had. I'm going to go back and I'm going to draft your initial town tax code. Now, if any of the things we talked about, you want to change, if there's any of those options you change your mind about, if there's any of those tax rates you change your mind about, let me know and I will adjust what I'm doing. So what's going to happen here? We'll roll out a little timeline sort of. One of the concerns we have right now is that in order to raise a tax or start a tax, there's all these notifications that you have to provide. The first one says that 75 days before you vote on it, you have to ask the Department of Revenue to give you a list of everyone who you are about to change the tax. Cool. It's the Department of Revenue. They don't have a list of everybody in Santan Valley. There is no Santan Valley in their system. Santan Valley does not exist. In their codes, that's why your code is TBD. But they know your county code, PNL. So if you ask them, I don't know what they're going to do. But if it's anything like what they did every time we ask them about somebody who wants to adopt the tax on health spas and gyms and that, which they don't license and therefore do not have in their system, they're going to come back with nothing. The alternative to coming back with nothing is they're going to come back with everybody who's in PNL. Everybody who's not in a city or town in Pinal County. That will be your list. And that's important because that list, the reason you have to ask them for that list is because you have to mail every one of those people a letter through the US mail that says, this is about to change. You have to notify them that you're about to change your options. You're about to adopt a tax. So I'm going to talk to DOR on Monday. We'll see what they think. It's DOR, so of course there's a process. There's a form. The form asks for the ordinance and what day it was signed. Okay, we have to do this before we can have the ordinance, so we're off to a great start. I love the Department of Revenue so much. We'll ask them and see what they come up with. In the meantime, Alan and I talked about trying to find some way to get a list of businesses that are in town. Even if it's more than exactly the town. I know your boundaries are kind of here and there. Even if it's just the greater Santan Valley area, it's better to notify more people than not enough people or whatever. We'll make an effort. And that's all you can be asked to do is as long as you're making an effort, close enough. Nobody's gonna kill you if you miss somebody. Okay. So that's what we're gonna start on probably Monday. I want to think about it a little bit more tomorrow. The reason this was posted online was, you have to post notice that you intend to think about changing something maybe at least 60 days from now. So first you have to post it, and then 60 days later, you can actually take action on whatever it is you decide to do. So that's the reason for the posting on the date that we had it, after our conversation earlier this week.
I'm not sure that they understand that we've posted. So.
Oh, okay.
If you look at our posting locations, we posted Tuesday, Alan?
Yes. The working session.
So it's on the window up front, it's on the pegboard and on the website.
And what that says is the town mayor and town council may consider this and may take action, may hold one or more hearings, and may take action on this not less than 60 days from the date of posting. So then there's the date of the posting, and then there's the 60 days after that. It's April something is the date. That's the earliest that you can vote on having a TPT. That's why we didn't do any voting tonight. We just all sort of nodded and agreed, and we got some direction to staff is what we're doing.
What's the difference? You said we had 60 days before we could take action, but 75 days for notification.
Oh, okay. So the 75-day thing is a new thing. Okay. So remember I said you had to send it a letter to everybody? Okay. So what they were adding was you have to send a letter to everybody 60 days before. You have to post it online and send a letter 60 days before you do whatever it is you're going to do. And in that send a letter 60 days before, it actually says the Department of Revenue will give you information. And so the Department of Revenue, being ever helpful, said, how are we supposed to do that unless they ask us for it beforehand and we need a time and I don't know when? And our response was, why don't you just have the Department of Revenue do it since they have the list and we don't have the list? Why do we have to ask them for the list and then we mail something? Why can't they just mail it to everybody? Anyway, Department of Revenue bounced around and said, okay, the only way we can do this is if you give us enough time. So the 75 days before gives Department of Revenue 15 days, really less than 15 days, to come up with their list that you're supposed to send 60 days before you do it. Now, again, this is the first year we've had this, okay? This all became real September of last year. I've done 7 rate changes since then, option changes, and not one of them have they been able to divide a list. Because it's options for things that we tax that they don't, so they don't have them as licensed taxpayers, so they don't have them on any list. I'm certain that every business in Santan Valley is licensed and registered with the Department of Revenue, but every one of them is licensed and registered with the Department of Revenue under PNL, no city. There's no way for them to separate out no city from no city not in Santan Valley.
So my question is, if we could just have them provide us a spreadsheet with everybody in PNL, and then we hire somebody to geo-sort it in GIS by address, then in theory, we could develop who is in our general area of Santan Valley and reduce that list by quite a bit.
You absolutely could do that.
We'd have to hire somebody.
Well, don't even get to that part yet. It's delightful, the things you think the Department of Revenue will do. Because that's not one of them. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. I mean, yes, you are absolutely right. That makes sense. That seems like a way you could do that kind of thing. But that's not a thing that's going to happen. It's going to be interesting to find out if they'll even talk to me about Santan Valley, because there is no Santan Valley at the Department of Revenue yet. You guys just aren't there. You're not until you adopt a tax, and then you will be, and then you'll be sorry. But we'll see how it goes. I'm going to do whatever I can do, and we may end up having to pull out that contract that makes me their representative or whatever the hell. I think that's what we're gonna have to do. We'll give you a contract that says part of paying your dues for the league means you also get my services to liaise with the Department of Revenue for you.
Technically membership.
Membership, that's what I mean, yes, whichever. As part and parcel of that, we also have a contract that says that I am authorized to have access to your tax information and help you with it and talk to the department and see who your taxpayers are and and I'm bound by all the confidentiality in the world. And we'll get Gabe on that list and maybe Brent, we'll see. None of you can be on that list. No elected officials are allowed to have access, sorry. Only people who have a legitimate business purpose for knowing tax administration. So that's why managers are kind of, some are not, so.
When I was in Florence and was given the option to do it, I read all the paperwork and said, I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't want this responsibility. This is a mess.
I don't want to.
Yeah. But anyway, we'll see where we go with that. We're gonna have to pull out a contract. I'll work on it this weekend. No problem. Yeah. So I'm going to work with them. We'll figure out what we figure out. More likely than not, you're gonna just have to come up with your own best guess as to who to send it to. We're going to make our best effort. We're not intentionally gonna not.
Oh, I know.
But we're handcuffed with what we can actually really do, honestly. So we'll do the best we can, and that's the best we can do. So,
So we are further than 60 days out at this point. So that,
Right.
yeah, just
yeah,
as a clarity.
we still have time. We still have time to adopt your rate in time for July 1st. So, and that's the target I'm shooting for, is we want to start for July 1st. And it's not the end of the world if we miss July 1st, then it ends up being August 1st, just because of the timing. It's not the end of the world. Don't worry about it. It's harder for somebody who already has a tax in place and already has taxpayers to switch rates in the middle of a quarter, a reporting period. That's when it becomes problematic. We're starting fresh out of the ground. There is nobody who's going to report the first quarter of fiscal year 27, July through September,
So we have.
and have to separate July from August, September. So it'll
And
be,
that
it'll be okay.
moratorium bills.
Oh, no.
4 years.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Brad, you guys are well informed.
yeah, they're,
I listen to them every Monday.
yeah, they're,
Oh, are you on that?
yeah. That's why after Monday's call this week, and I'd sent out the guides and everything, I said, hey, if anybody wants one and didn't get it, and G Jenkins was one of the ones, I'm like, I know that name. I know that name. Yeah, she was one of the ones who asked for copies.
I try to be undercover with, I don't know what job I'm doing.
Yeah, there is a bill that says that cities and towns may not raise any tax fee rate or anything higher than the rate they imposed in their approved and imposed in their FY 2026 budget.
I got you.
So my thought is.
So you guys ain't got no,
So my
you ain't got
thought
none of
is
them in your
we did
budget.
it Before July 1st.
Yeah, no, that's not gonna
That's not
happen.
gonna fly.
Yeah, that's not gonna, I wouldn't worry about, that bill's not gonna last. And if that bill managed to make it all the way up, that's getting vetoed. That's a ridiculous thing. You can't tell the cities and towns, because that's all it really applies to, is you can't raise anything for 4 years at all.
What about the HCR?
Yeah.
That's what scares me. I think the bill's DOA in
Yeah,
the Senate, but I'm worried about the
Yeah,
HCR.
there's no way the bill's going through. The HCR, so there's bills that go through both chambers and get signed by the governor, become law, or get vetoed. An HCR only goes through the 2 chambers, so it can just be majority votes only, and it goes directly to the ballot, and then it gets voted on. There's 150 HCRs this year, right? 150? And last year we had like 90 something. It wasn't even, we thought last year was a lot, and then they got better at it, apparently. Here's the thing. They've already got 4 or 5 things that are on the ballot in November. Anything that they approve this year from an HCR, SCR standpoint is another thing that has to go on the ballot. And ballot fatigue is a real thing. And they
And
don't
how many
want
went last year? Like 15?
We had 13, I think, last time
So
around,
that they
24.
posted the.
And it was way too many. It was way too, they were complaining about that. And so they kind of learn from that, you would think. Yes, those HCRs are out there. That is one that theoretically could go the distance, but the reality is most of them are there as negotiating tools. Most of them are there as, give me what I want, or I've got the votes and I'm going to put this on the ballot and you won't be happy. And they're not going to pass all of those things. So I don't think, I know that it's out there. My personal opinion, I don't think that's one that's going to make it to the ballot.
You're right.
That's just my feeling on it. So, because it's too extreme. It's just, it's too insane. So, yeah. You guys were talking about population a little bit before. Let's touch on population for a second. Here's something cool. So, right now you're at 99,894, which was whatever number they picked from whenever. But okay, fair enough. That's what you're getting your shared revenue based on right now. In theory, it sounds like they may have a real number for you before July 1st, before the real numbers come out in May. Depending on when that lands, what's really going to happen is you're really probably going to get readjusted back based on the official estimate as of July 1, June 30 of 2026, or sorry, 2025. That comes out in May from the Census Bureau. So what you're going to be getting, Gabe's familiar with this, it's been getting them every year. In March, I'm going to send out the preliminary version of the shared revenue anticipated for fiscal year 27. That'll be using the last year's number. So for you guys, it'll be 99,894.
Which is a 2020 number.
Actually, that's a grossed up number from 2020, or maybe it's your whole area.
It's the whole,
2020?
it's the census place. It's
Yeah.
more specific. boundary.
Which is different than the boundary of the town, which is different than the population 6 years away. Yeah, I get it. It'll be interesting to see where that number lands and what the timing of it all is. I suspect the number is going to be higher. I'm expecting it's around 104, 105, somewhere in there. It's going to be the estimated population as of July 1, 2025, which is what we're going to use for spreading out shared revenues and charging you for the state's new cool tax system and all the fun things that go along with it. And, you know, how we calculate how much your dues are and all the fun things. We're going to have a real number for that finally. And when that lands, we're all the way through basically February already. If they even manage to get something to you together, let's say, for sake of argument, you got a real number from Census Bureau in April. The Department of Revenue is going to rebalance all of the shared revenues that you've been getting based on that number. Might make it in May. In May, you might see the adjustment in the May distribution, probably based on the speed they work at. And what that'll mean is you'll either get a bump, or you'll see minuses. You're not going to see negative. You'll still see a number, but you'll have a column of negative on there, and then everybody else will have a positive. What you're probably going to have is you're going to have another one of these, like you did with the TPT distribution, where you've got a number, $5 million, and everybody else has a negative. That balances out that $5 million.
That's all.
It was a surprise.
Believe me, I know you did. My email knows everybody saw it. I had no idea so many people paid so much attention to that report. As it turns out, they didn't. I shouldn't have sent it to everybody, but oh well, whatever. Yeah.
I didn't know. I was sad, but then I was happy, so I had to adjust.
You had to be very, very angry until you got out of the office.
I didn't know yet, so I was sad.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So that will happen, but based on the timing, because in May, you're going to know what your real number is for that window, or for the coming window, which means you should also know the real number for the last window. And which one do they use? Do they go with, here's our certified special, or 2 weeks later, here's your July 2025, and here's what your July 24 was.
We're afraid that they're gonna use the census certification, which based on permit data for the last 6 years, this area's grown a lot since 2020 and we know all that information because it's provided by the home builders every month.
Oh, yeah.
We're worried they're gonna use that census number and we're gonna miss out for a year.
Yeah, one of the things, so the way that the Census Bureau actually does these estimates, we discovered after the 2020 census came in, and it was a surprisingly weird number compared to what we thought we were gonna be. And a lot of people, a lot of cities and towns, their population actually went down from 2019 because we've been doing estimates from 2010, 11, 12, and 19, and then the 2020 census came out and a bunch of people went down in population. It's like, how the hell did that happen? We know our population isn't going down. We thought we were low. The 2020 census was a mess, a huge, huge mess. And I'm kind of worried that the 2030 is going to be the same way. We'll see. But what they've started doing, they used to be going all on, building permits and C of O notices and all these other data points that they had. And then the pandemic came along and the next set of estimates started coming out weird again. And it's like, okay, now what the hell just happened this time? And what they have done is they have gradually shifted over time to rely more and more heavily on individual income tax information. And so all these Airbnbs, yeah, you have 10,000 houses, but 2,000 of those houses are short-term rentals. No, there's not a person who lives there, so that's not population. But I got income tax returns from these 8,000, so I know these 8,000, and I know how many people are in those because that's on your return. So now that's an easier, better way for me to do that. The problem is the lag. There's a lag on when they get that info and how they use that info. So, but I guess it's getting better. I don't know. We'll see. So the timing is going to be interesting. I wouldn't worry about it. I think your number is going to come in higher no matter which way things shake out. And then one day the Department of Revenue will either give you more money and take it from everybody else, or take some of your money and give it to everybody else. Probably the first one, not the last one. And then I'll have to listen to the other 91. I'll listen and moaning again about, oh, pull out 100,000 people. Hey, what do you want me to do about it? So anyway. Yeah. We should be able to limit the size of these people. They're overweight and we should allow 100,001. Anyway, that's where we're at. That's what's going to happen. Looking forward to working with Gabe again. Still in just a different place. If you have any questions, if you want anything to change, if you have an idea, send me an email. We can work on it. We can talk about it. I'm going to start drafting up a code. And what you're going to get is you're going to get an ordinance. The ordinance says the town adopts a tax code. Here are the classifications and our rates for each classification. Okay. And then you're going to get a resolution. And the resolution is the actual body of the tax code. So you're required to publish the ordinance. So that's why I'm going to give you the 2-page thing that you're required to publish and put in the paper. You're not required to publish the resolution. So the 120-page thing, that's where the code's going to be. That's going to be the thing you keep in the clerk's office and you publish online and you do all the happy joke things with that. But you don't have to publish it in the newspaper. So that's the reason why we do an ordinance and a resolution all the time. We can change it. You can change it night of that you approve it on the fly if you want. So none of this is locked in stone, but I do appreciate all the guidance and the information. Hopefully everybody has a pretty good, got their feet under them about what we're about to do.
But to change it in the future, it has to go to the voters, correct?
No.
It does not.
No.
Really?
No, you guys are a town. Congratulations. The 5 of you, simple majority. Any 3 of you at any time can change whatever you want to do. So.
Well, they actually have 7, so they just have 5 for tonight.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. Hold on. I know one thing we forgot to talk about, damn it.
Food. I was gonna tell you, but I know everybody's tired.
Yeah, let's
I-
put
yes.
a put on that. I think we want to come back at a later date and talk about that with.
Well, Alan's melting in his seat.
For drafting purposes, I'm gonna put food in there and we'll see what happens.
Put it in for drafting purposes. We might have an E-session with council to kind of flush that out a little bit for the legal considerations.
We have some options that
Yeah.
we're there.
Yeah.
We'll probably do that in an E-session.
All right.
Okay, is there
Appreciate your
concluded?
time. Thank you very much. I'm amazed we're all awake. Good job, everybody. I mean, I know that I do this and
It's our bedtime.
I'm excited, but you know, whatever.
We'll save the budget to the end.
All right. Any questions, anything else I want to before we're done?
I have plenty of questions.
Shoot me an email anytime.
I sure will.
Yeah, email him.
Yeah.
They're shutting me down.
Yeah, email him. Yeah.
That was here.
All right. All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for being here.
Happy to help.
Well, at this point, we have no other business, so is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Mayor, motion to adjourn.
Second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are.
Go.